a partner in these companies. So whether it was transportation business or real estate development, which is where I've spent the most of my focus for the last 20 years. I just, as an attorney and as a developer and involved in construction and real estate development and so on, I was hoping that my experience in those fields would add some value really to what we're trying to do in this town. I love Highland Beach. My wife and I have lived here for almost 3 years, and I have no intention of going anywhere.
Thank you. And actually, I'm happy to see people who have not been on a board come forward, because we very often have a difficult time filling seats because we can't get qualified people. And I agree. I think that your background, especially on something like adjustments and appeals, you know what goes into these things and whether what they're asking for is reasonable or not reasonable.
Absolutely.
And new blood.
And yeah, absolutely. New blood
Or
is
new
always
old
good.
blood, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Peggy?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Hi, Bill.
Hi.
You live one street south of me, so nice to meet a new neighbor.
Nice to meet you.
Yep. And I wondered, years ago, this board, before we had a town planner and a wonderful building department, this board at times just rubber stamped many requests, if not almost all requests, because I did that data before I ran for office going into it. I just wondered how your theories and principles would hold when looking at an appeal or an adjustment for a property, being as you're a developer and you've got experience in it, and yet you live here. So how would you strike a balance and how would you approach it?
Well, I think when you're looking at an appeal for, let's say, on a zoning situation, you've got to look at the town plan, what the vision is for the town. And you hope that when a developer comes in with an idea that they're proposing something that's consistent with what the town is looking for in terms of the vision, the long-term plan for the town. And if there's some sort of a variation that they're looking for, or they're looking for some sort of relief from the code and that sort of thing, I think they'd have to present a compelling case, and you'd still want to hope that overall that what they're bringing is sort of in line with the long-term plan for the town. I think what happens a lot of time, which frustrates neighbors and community members, is when you've got developers that appear to be just sort of running roughshod over the city or the town's, long-term vision and the sort of community atmosphere that we all hope to maintain here in Highland Beach. So I would try to look at it from both sides, as I've certainly been on both sides. But at the end of the day, for somebody to get a variance that's just completely inconsistent with the vision that the town has for its long-term plan, I think you have to sort of be skeptical about that sort of an approach. And hopefully you can bring, while not stifling development, you can hopefully convince investors and local developers to sort of come in line to the extent possible with what the vision is for the town.
Okay, great. And would you have a problem saying no to a neighbor and a fellow resident? And I think that can be difficult for me or anyone, like, no, that doesn't work. Are you capable of making those tough choices?
Yeah, that's business. I have no problem with that at all. I probably have more problem on the code enforcement board than I would with this. I mean, these are typically big business decisions. I realize sometimes they're smaller projects, but at the end of the day, any developer or member of the community that's looking to do a project in Highland Beach that's really trying to work around the rules and work around the vision, it's hard to feel overly sympathetic with that. On the other hand, if they're trying their best and you can help work with them to get them sort of in line with something that we would all find acceptable, that's a different story. But for just an unreasonable request, I certainly have no problem saying no.
Okay, I appreciate that. I appreciate you understanding as the vice mayor stated once so succinctly, the culture of Highland Beach is kind of a special place. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And of course, I have to answer to my wife too. So if I make a bad decision, she's gonna come down on me.
Do you say no often to her? No. I'm sorry, I don't want to go.
It typically sounds like yes. That's great.
Natasha?
Yeah, I also noticed that you have not served on a board before. So thank you
No.
very much for volunteering. I think that's really great. More and more people getting involved. I guess my question is, was there anything that motivated you at this point to get involved? You said you've been here 3 years. Is there any specific issue or concern you have?
I've thought about, we all find excuses, right, not to volunteer our time. I guess I'm just at the point now where when I saw the advertisement or the sort of call for volunteers, I took a couple of looks at it. I thought about it, mentioned it to my wife. I said, I'm gonna see what's involved, and if it makes sense in terms of commitment, and I'm not going to short sell, if you will, the board, then I'd like to see if there's something I can do to help. I grew up in a small town in Massachusetts. I remember having friends whose parents served on local, we called them selectmen up there as opposed to commissioners. And I always thought it was pretty neat that they were willing to find time out of their busy professions to give back to the town. And I just thought this was one small way I could kind of give back to the town. My wife and I love it here.
Oh, great. Yeah, I thought your background was just perfect for this type of role. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Hi.
Hi.
What brought you to Highland Beach?
My wife and I have lived, I'm going to say for the most part, in South Florida for the last 30 years, other than about an 8-year stint I did in Chicago for business. We ended up coming back to Florida, and my wife said, well, if you're bringing me back to Florida, I need to be within walking distance of the beach. My partner and our offices are in Deerfield Beach. Frankly, we were searching up and down the beach looking for a place to live, and we got lucky with the townhome that we're living in now in Bel Air, and having the beach access across the street, and my wife, who prefers to be great. My partner's lived in South Florida, my business partner in Deerfield Beach for the last 40 years. He also recommended Highland Beach. He said, if you want to be near the beach, that's a great place to be. So,
Gotcha.
So it was sort of a confluence of events, but very happy to be here.
Well, it's our benefit that you came.
Thank you.
Good. I have no more questions. Do you have any questions of us?
I don't. I look forward to working with you all and hopefully making good decisions.
Okay. The committee that you selected as your first choice meets very, very rarely. In fact, I don't think it has met in the last 12 months.
Oh,
There is-
I knew it met rarely. I didn't realize it was that rare.
Yeah, there happens to be a meeting coming up. I think it's next week, right? But I believe that's the first time in at least 12 months, might be more. We kid about how infrequent that comes up. Down the road, would you consider adding one with your background? It might be very helpful.
I would. I actually, and I apologize, I forget the gentleman's name who leads the board for code enforcement, was also looking for me to join that particular board. So I would entertain serving on a second board if that made sense.
Okay, so Limelda, we ought to keep that in mind if something is available down the road.
Noted.
Okay. Anybody else have any further questions before we move forward?
Yes. We're in Massachusetts.
Yeah, it wasn't lost to me. I heard you talking. I grew up in Foxborough.
Foxborough.
Ah, not too far.
So I apologize in advance to the Dolphin fans, although you did beat us last week. So I've been here for 30 years, but once you're born and raised in Boston, you can't quite give it all up. So
Yeah,
But do you follow Brady?
I still do follow Brady.
There you go.
Yeah.
well,
I like
you,
this guy.
you just got a negative vote. Okay, we need a motion.
I move that we approve resolution 2021-029, appointing Joel Levinson and William Spruce to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals.
Okay, all in favor of that, just say aye.
We need
Aye.
we need a second.
Rob, we need a second.
I'll give a second.
I think we have a
These are
second.
Massachusetts. I got to give it a second.
Okay. And with the second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
But
Aye.
Brady grew up in
Okay.
Michigan. I have to throw that in.
Oh, yeah, that's
Sorry.
That's okay. That's where I went to law school. So
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you and welcome to the boards.
thank you very much. I look
Welcome.
forward to meeting you all in person later.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to resolution 2021-030. Resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, ratifying the selection, appointments, and term of office of members of Code Enforcement Board and providing for an effective date.
So with this one, you have four, it appears qualified reappointments. And then you have one Nelda, correct me if I'm wrong, open vacancy, and you have two interested candidates.
That's correct.
Okay. And the first of the interested candidates would be whom?
Mr. David Powell.
And is Mr.
yeah,
Powell
Wait,
here?
Okay, excuse me,
Wait,
before we
hold
get
on.
to him, while I'm sorry to say this because I like him, Miles Schlam will have served 6 years. He started in 2015 and it's to the present. So,
Well, I believe I will have to check. I think he served an unexpired term. An unexpired term does not count toward a full
Oh,
2 consecutive terms.
Oh,
I don't know, I was just counting years from 2015 to 2021.
yeah, as the longest
I
member of
think
the,
I will double check that, but I believe he served, and when he first came on board, he was filling in an unexpired term. But I'll confirm that
Okay.
real quick. And second, we do have for the code enforcement, we have Mr. Robert present, and then we also have Christina Converse. She should be available via Zoom.
Okay, David, you are here?
I am.
Good.
It's not, yeah, it's actually, it's actually Mr. Robert LaSource and Miss Christina Converse. She's available via Zoom. So we have 2 for the code enforcement board, 1 via Zoom and 1 in the audience.
And Christina is in the audience?
She's on Zoom.
Okay.
No,
Let's do,
Christine is in Charlotte, North Carolina, participating via Zoom.
okay, let's bring Christina up on Zoom.
She's on the telephone. She's available. She's present. She's just on telephone.
Can we bring her up, please?
Christina, can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
Hello, this is
Yes, I can hear you.
Doug Hillman. How are you?
Hi, Doug. I'm in Charlotte visiting my daughter, so therefore that's why I'm participating via Zoom.
Well, that's okay. We can still chat with you, so that works out well.
Okay,
We're going to ask each of our commissioners to chat with you a little bit. Will that be okay?
that's fine.
Okay, we're going to start with John Shoemaker. So I'm going to turn you over to
Okay.
Commissioner Shoemaker.
yes, well, welcome. I'm glad to see your application. And as I understand it, you're also a lawyer. And although I read.
Well, I've been retired from the practice of law quite a while, but I was admitted to the New York State Bar and passed the New York State test, obviously.
And what was your discipline as a lawyer? Where did you focus?
Okay, well, I went to law school because I wanted to become a dean of students. I was a director of counseling at Hudson Valley Community College. And to get a PhD in education would take me 2 more years. And I said I wasn't interested in that degree. So therefore I said it'll take me 3 to go to law school. So I went to law school, passed the bar, was admitted to the bar, was offered a very nice job. I would tell you that my area of expertise in law was civil procedure. So I was offered a job with the New York State Court Administration. However, I really felt that I would have had to go to New York City for that job, which I was committed to the Albany area. Therefore, I said I didn't want to just practice any area of law. I decided to go back and go to my Hudson Valley Community College because I was very, very good at what I did there.
So that's interesting. Why then code enforcement? Do you feel that will help you leverage your civil experience?
No, the reason I became very interested in code enforcement is because I believe my building is probably the #1 violator of getting permits.
Okay.
I believe very I believe very strongly that you should get permits. Your code enforcement people sort of live in our parking lot a little bit because we've been so misguided. Before I got the condo, I had someone, my mother used to own the condo I bought. My family sold it. Whoever bought it or ended up doing all kinds of work illegally in there. I just discovered it when my neighbor was gutting her place illegally. Therefore, I ended up paying over $4,000 out of my pocket to fix something that my building should have seen happening, my office manager should have seen happening, the contractor, the people who owned it, and nobody did the right thing by getting penalties, by getting permits. So therefore, it cost me, who had nothing to do with it, and I could have not done anything and made my building fix it because it's their responsibility, whatever is between the walls. But I said my building didn't put those wires there. The people who bought the condo for my mother put those wires there. So I paid it all and got it all fixed up. But I believe very strongly that when you live in a condo, townhouse, you need to do the right thing. And so I'm interested in seeing that people are doing the right things for all of their neighbors' protection.
Wow, that's quite a response. I wasn't expecting that, but Penthouse Highlands is also, is that not more than 40 years old?
It is more than 40 years old. I think it's either the second or third oldest building in Highland Beach.
That's right. And so you're looking then, as we look at the next year, with certifications being a priority, and you feel comfortable in that world where we're going to have to look at not only yours, but so many others as to how they go forward with certification and meeting the requirements. And you feel comfortable in that environment?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't I feel comfortable in that environment, I guess I would ask.
Well, this is going to involve you in a lot more than just your current condominium and the issues with that, which clearly you'll be able to bring a lot to bear on the problems. But this is something that we're going to have to deal with across multiple condominiums, and it will require some time, I believe, and it's going to involve some controversy, and not everybody can handle conflict. So do you feel comfortable in that world of potential conflict?
I do. And I think that most people probably are going to be more receptive to suggestions on how to make their buildings more secure and code compliant than maybe they would have before this collapse in Surfside.
Very well. I appreciate your comments. I don't want to take too much more time, but thank you for your, I think, very candid and thorough responses.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Moving on to Evelyn.
Good afternoon. I do
Good
understand
afternoon.
people who get a law degree to go into administration in other places. It's done all the time.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I did pass the bar because I
Yeah.
said, you know what? I've got all this knowledge now. I might as well take this bar and see, make sure I pass it, which I did, and I passed it the first time.
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
had I not passed it the first, had I not passed it the first time, I might have said, well, I don't plan on using it. Maybe I wouldn't have passed it the second time.
Well, I know somebody in my class got a law degree to move up in administration in a medical school.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a
I
very
think-
valuable degree to have to. I served on committees at Hudson Valley. I chaired the Student Rights Committee. I chaired the Academic Complaints Committee. In other words, my employer was very glad to use my law degree.
It's very nice to hear somebody who wants to enforce the rules. It's not
Oh,
often.
I do. I believe very, very strongly in it. And I really think that some of what people do as far as not getting permits is out of ignorance. insofar as up north, if you do any improvement in your home, you are going to see your taxes increase. And I still don't think people in Florida really understand that in a condo, you can do nothing to your condo versus you can make it the top-notch condo in the building and decked out. And you're going to pay the same amount of taxes, except for the homestead exemption, if you get that or don't get that. But I don't think people really understand it because it's so different than up north.
Yeah, also, you're absolutely right, though. The first step in making sure that people get permits rests with your management. Because they
Absolutely.
have the ability to stop people from coming in and stop work on any particular unit if they don't have the right permits in place.
I have dealt with my condo president regarding what happened when construction started in the unit next to me without any permits, and then discovering how it impacted me when my wiring that was done without permits when the work was done after my mom died. And I've talked to my board president about it, and I intend to talk to him when he's back in town more about it to emphasize this, because I now have a letter from my insurance company declining my claim, which we knew they would, but specifically highlighting the fact that it is the condo's responsibility for what's in the wall. And maybe if the condo realizes they are responsible for the plumbing that somebody puts in and the wiring somebody puts in, they will be more proactive in what gets put in their walls.
That's probably true. Okay, thank you. I appreciate your candor, and I like the fact that, again, somebody coming on board who hasn't been involved. I think it's a great thing. Thank you.
Yeah, we got a great town. Thank you, Evelyn.
Move on to Peggy.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Yes, hello. Nice to meet you over the phone. I wondered if you could clarify, you stated that the tax base is different, that it's different up north regarding condo assessments. If you could just clarify that.
Well, no, I think most of the people that live in my building have a home up north, like I did. So when you do improvements to your home and you get permits, one of the things that happens as soon as you do any kind of major improvement to your home is that your assessment goes up and therefore your taxes go up. Versus if you live in a condo in Florida, the only thing that really matters is the base assessment. And then the difference is if you get a homestead exemption, so that you can make your condo, the original condo that they built back in 1960 for my building, or you can make your condo on the interior of $500,000 condo on the interior, but your taxes don't change.
I understand. I
And
wasn't.
Yeah.
No, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
don't think people realize that because most of them are coming from a state where they do change based on you doing home improvements.
I see. I understand. I wasn't aware you were comparing it with homes up north. Understood. And I wondered if you did not have such code problems in your building, would you still maybe have run or would not have come to your forefront? Just
I'm
curious.
not sure, to be honest. This certainly put it right in my face a lot. I was interested before my situation was highlighted with my wiring. I was absolutely still interested because I saw that my building wasn't doing the right thing. I saw that our office manager knew work was going on in our building, and she knew there were no permits. So that came to my attention 2 years ago when my building was being painted. And I said, this has to stop. So I talked to our board president, who was different at that time. So this is something that's been in my eyesight and bothered me for quite a while.
I see. Thank you. And is your management still the same as this management you're speaking of, or have you changed the board?
Well,
or anything?
the management, the board's different. The board did change several people last February. The management, when the work was done in my condo, is different than the management now. And the management, I don't know what's going to be happening with the management, but again, my board president is coming back. I intend to show him my information from Mika, and I intend to again impress upon him the importance of making sure that people have permits and display the permits.
Got it. And I was going to ask if you'd have any problem levying a position against a neighbor, but I think you've already answered that. So I'll move on. Thank you very much for your interest.
My answer in that is I definitely would not have a problem with that.
Thank you very much for your interest and your answers.
Okay,
Thank you.
Moving on to Natasha.
Thank you for volunteering. It is always nice to see new people come forward. I guess one thing as I've heard you answer questions to other commissioners, how has your experience with construction? Sounds like it's kind of grown with your own personal experience with what's happened in your condo. Like as I look at your background, it doesn't appear, you don't mention anything with any kind of experience with construction. I guess my question to you is, do you feel like you've grown with your experience with construction, with your experience, and how relevant do you think that is to serving on the Code Enforcement Board?
I think the more you know about construction, the better off you are. One, I was my own general contractor for an addition to my home up north. In other words, I oversaw and I hired everybody involved. And I had an architect at Hudson Valley design it, and then I oversaw the whole project, including hiring my own electrician, my own plumber, my own cabinet maker, etc. I did, when I came to Florida, I did major revisions in my condo. As far as bathrooms, I hired a contractor who got the permits. I flew in to oversee that construction. I used to write my midnight ramblings on the wall for him saying, change this to this, change this to this. I think I don't know a lot about the structural construction. How's that? But I am willing to learn more. I might oversee a project for my daughter in Charlotte.
Okay, so your experience in construction has pretty much been the various projects that you've overseen with your own personal.
Correct. I don't know how to do construction whatsoever.
Right.
I didn't grow up in a household where that was, we hired people to do things. We weren't very handy to do them ourselves.
Okay. Well, thank you. That's all I have.
What's that?
Yes.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Hi, Christine. This is Doug again.
Yes, Doug.
Before we move on, I'm going to ask our attorney, Glenn, to comment on potential issues when there is looks like there may be a conflict of interest when a board member comes up against a case. Glenn, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I've heard the applicant talk about her condo and issues in her condo. I just wanted to point out that she probably would have to recuse herself from issues that she was in any way involved with, that she may have observed herself. You can't be a witness as well as a judge on a case. But other than that, obviously she could still be appointed and hear all other cases, and there may even be cases in her own condo.
Well, let me ask you, may I ask you this question? If there's a hearing on it, as long as you disclose the information that this happens to be related to a unit in the condo that I live in, you still would have to disqualify yourself?
You're always going to have to disclose, and it'll be a case-by-case call as to whether your involvement was so significant that you had to disqualify yourself or just incidental and you may be able to participate upon disclosing. So I just wanted to put it out there so you're not surprised if you get appointed. And it sounds like one of your reasons is to be involved with cases in your own condo. You may be somewhat restricted.
Well, it's not just, I see this happening in other places. So it's not, I see how prevalent it is in my condo building. I am sure the same kind of things going on in other buildings. And I think people deserve the protection of getting the right permits and appropriate permits. So even if it's not my building, I have just as much interest in protecting the people that are in that unit because we're all that building because we're also interdependent on our own neighbors.
A question. I think the mayor's brought up a good point, but let me just clarify. She can continue to have conversations with the management about her unit on a personal basis, but not as a representative of the Code Enforcement Board.
Yeah, I mean,
As a representative of the Code Enforcement Board, she can't then speak to the condo in that position to affect action.
you're correct, but a different example would be, for example, she couldn't complain to the code officer that there's a violation in her building, having observed that violation, essentially be the prosecutor or the victim or a witness,
Right.
and then serve on the board and judge whether there truly was a violation because she's got information. And again, it's going to always be case by case. If she glanced at it, that's one thing. If she was intimately involved, that's another thing. I just didn't want her to come on board without at least thinking that there may be some occasions that she might not be able to participate on some of those cases. There's not a blanket.
Well,
prohibition.
I would realize that for example, had I been on this committee and I turned in my neighbor who did a demolition because she had no permits, I would assume that she would not want me involved in any kind of hearing.
That's for sure.
That was the point. Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, that would be my assumption.
Okay.
Thank you, Glenn. Moving on, Christine, how long have you been a resident here in Highland Beach?
I bought the condo in 2011. I've been a Florida resident since 2013. I have been a full-time resident since 2016 September.
Gotcha. And it was this unfortunate incident that brought you to wanting to volunteer on the board?
No, as I indicated, I had been interested in it for well over 2 years. I think that this unfortunate incident really hit me on the head and say, get involved. To be very blunt with you, I used to play duplicate bridge every single day of my life in Florida. And duplicate bridge no longer really exists. There used to be during the summer maybe 150 tables within 20 miles of me. Now
Wow.
one club has opened up and there are 10 or 11 tables. So I do play bridge online, but I now have a lot more time to devote to other activities.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay. And by the way, thank you for submitting your application and being interested. It's a heck of a turnaround. I recall just as little as 2 or 3 years ago, we were having trouble getting people to be interested in serving on the boards. And now it's a real pleasure to have people qualified like you and others wanting to serve. This is a real pleasure. Anybody have any other?
We live in a great town. We really do. And like the police are in our parking lot a lot too. And I consider myself very fortunate to live where I do live.
Well, Chief Hartman
And I
is sitting.
think we have
here
a very lot of positive things going on.
Okay, thank you. The Chief Hartman is sitting here and we don't like to say nice things about the police while the chief is here.
Oh, you have the nicest police officers in the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anybody have any more questions before we move on?
Nope.
Go ahead.
I just want to make a quick clarification of my earlier statement. Since you appointed Mr. Linson to the Board of Appeals and Adjustments, you actually have 2 vacancies on the Code Enforcement Board. So I spoke incorrectly. So
We do have.
Correct.
the
Is that-
ability to appoint both of those that are wishing appointment is an option for you.
So it's 2 vacancies in addition to the reappointments?
That's correct.
Yes. So
Okay.
sorry if I didn't make that clear.
And we do have Mr. Robert is in the audience. here.
Yes, thank you. Robert, would you go on to the stand, please? Robert, do you have any remarks before we pound you with questions? If turn that on, please.
I'll start all over.
Okay.
I moved to Highland Beach in 1999. I've been a licensed contractor in Florida since 1974 continuous. I've never had a complaint against me. I've dealt with 40-year-old buildings being recertified. I've done the work with engineers and architects. I understand what code is. It's for life safety, which is the number one thing. Like, if that's not happening, it's got to be pushed. Now, if you understand Highland Beach is Palm Beach County, which used to be built under the Southern Standard Building Code. It was the Wild West here. The code was so horrible. I did most of my building when I built homes in Broward County, which was the Southern Standard plus the South Florida Building Code. So it was a lot more difficult. Then Broward County and Dade County got together, and that's why we have this new hurricane code, which is statewide. We have the toughest building code in the world, including areas that have earthquakes. So it's not like anyone gets away with anything when they build something.
Okay, let's start with John.
Okay, well, very good. So I want to right up front say, in code enforcement, I don't know, I sure as heck hope we don't need your martial arts skill.
I love children. I like hitting them.
John, you stole what I was going to comment on.
Well, my goodness, if you do need to practice your martial arts skill,
I do it every
we're
day.
in real trouble. But let me clarify something. You're not an engineer. You
No,
are.
I'm a certified state general contractor.
Okay. Which, when you mentioned that you've worked with,
I
Certification
hire
projects.
engineers and architects.
right, okay. So you're familiar with also the special inspector for certifications and
Absolutely.
the process, and you've gone through that. With how many different buildings have you done
Have
that?
I done about 4 40-year buildings?
That's exceptional for what we're trying to do here, obviously, because there's not a whole lot of experience, given that, it's only been, well, when was it that they established the new rules for
About 15
Dave.
years ago.
15?
Yeah.
So, all right, so as a general contractor, where do you see as the main focus and issues that you would have to deal with in this role? code
In
enforcement?
Highland Beach,
Yes,
water heater installations. Most people need something done right away. So they don't understand, especially if they're in a condo, that condo law is if I'm on the 3rd floor and my water heater busts, I'm not responsible for the guys on the 2nd and 1st floor. So that guy on the 3rd floor in a rush goes, well, I need my hot water. Well, he's got to still let someone know that he's in the process. Because if he puts it in wrong and it bursts, then you got a problem with the neighbors.
so you see that as the major issue.
Yeah,
then?
but I can see where the board is going. You guys want to take care of these buildings which my building was built in 76. So I guess we're going to have to go for a 40-year,
For sure.
which we did our mitigation with straps and whatever we could do like 5 years ago. But
And so, and now having done this for your career and whatnot, is this the first time you've been involved at a town government level?
yes, you
And
guys are
why?
doing a good job.
No, but why then? Why are you personally pursuing this as?
Because I'm young enough to do it now. I felt like I was getting old, but
No.
I'm doing it because this is my town. So I'm going to help.
That's the
I mean-
right reason.
I can't do martial arts like I used to. Now I look like an old slow guy.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I think that your background is well suited for this.
Thank you.
Because I think that while you don't have to know about construction to know if there is a code enforcement problem, because you'll hear from the town code enforcement officer and you'll get expert information on what the exact violation is. But the fact that you can actually understand what some of the engineers and architects are talking about that's a benefit.
Thank you.
And thank you for volunteering. I think that this is actually a good fit. Thank you.
Peg,
Yes, hi, Robert.
Hello.
The fact that you know that the codes were updated 15 years ago shows that you're on top of things, because it was after the 4 storms of 04 and the 3 of
I
05.
didn't catch that. What?
And the hurricanes of 04 and 05 did help instigate the changes to codes, particularly in this area. And the fact that you know that shows that you're up on these matters. So I appreciate that. I wondered, not a whole lot more that you haven't answered already from my fellow commissioners, but I wondered, same question I've asked previously, is you wouldn't have a problem levying perhaps what a neighbor would consider a negative opinion. You have no problem going up against a fellow resident, which is, I think, is the toughest part of that job in terms of judgment.
I don't look at it as going against a resident. If they don't understand what life safety is, they need to be educated at that point. I mean, it's, if they just put a coat of paint on a wall, that's a different problem. But if they did something that, like electrical wiring, like that other lady, that's horrible. I mean, a lot of this wiring in this city, that's the older structures, is the old wrapped in plastic. And that's totally illegal, but that's how they build.
You got it.
And
Great
she
answer.
might not know that.
I understand. I appreciate that. I have no other questions at this time. I think you're a wonderful fit, and you seem to be very, very vigilant and ready to go for us. I appreciate that.
Hey, Robert. Yeah, thank you for volunteering. I think your background in construction is really ideal. And I really like that you're starting off with like the public safety component of it, because I think having that as the base is really critical, you know, as far as like how you're coming at it. And I think that also helps with the message, you know, being placed in awkward situations, you know, you're coming at it from a safety perspective. I think that's really excellent. Yeah, I really don't have many more questions of you. Thank you for volunteering, and yeah, thanks very much.
I agree 100% with what our vice mayor said. Background's perfect, knowledge is perfect.
That wasn't very original. Come on.
I don't know where you've been all these years, but
The
thank you.
Bronx.
Okay, thanks for stepping up.
Yes.
Right, folks.
Just ideal.
Thank you. Have a safe
Okay.
day.
Okay, that completes reviewing the 2 candidates.
We need to,
Pardon me?
we need to have a motion.
Yes, we need a motion on what we want to do now.
So just to clarify, how many positions are
I
we
can turn
filling?
that on. Or speak into it.
How many positions are we filling?
We have 2 positions opened and
And
we
2
have 2
candidates.
candidates.
Okay.
And you have 4
Reappointments.
reappointments.
Yes.
Say again?
You have 4 reappointments and 2 new applicants. So that's a total of.
Yeah, so the reappointments are no brainers. We agreed at the last meeting that all reappointments would go through. So that's why we're not interviewing any of them. So we interviewed the 2 and now we have to decide what we want to do.
I'd like to make a motion to honor the 4 reappointments and appoint our 2 new candidates to the 2 open spots, one that was in existence and one created when Joel Elishan moved over to the other board.
Okay, do we have a second?
A second, the motion.
All of that are in favor of that, say aye.
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 So that's approving.
Is there anybody opposed to it?
Only to part of it.
Say again?
Only opposed to part of it.
What part are you opposed to? And they'll discuss it.
I think I need to know more about Miss Converse.
Okay, I have equal concerns about Christine. I'm not sure that she's a good candidate for that. Appeared to me as though she was interested in that because of her personal experience. Don't know that she's really qualified for that. So I would certainly go with one of the candidates without concern whatsoever. I think he's perfect. No question about the four. So I would certainly be in favor of the four reappointments plus Robert without hesitation. But I do have hesitation, as does my associate Evelyn.
So can we reserve judgment on Ms. Converse and just vote the other 5 people in?
Why don't I make a new motion since I made the first one?
Well, wait a minute,
Okay.
before you make the motion.
Yeah, you want to have a further
You've
discussion?
expressed some hesitation, I believe is the
Mhm.
expression. And so let me come back and say, well, wait a minute. She understands that she would have to recuse herself relative to her unit. She is a lawyer who understands that, so she's a smart lady. If she didn't have that conflict with her own management in her own condo, would we have approved her for the board anyway? And I think we would have.
I would not,
You would not. And on what basis?
because it
Just to
appeared to me
understand.
as though her motivation was because of that experience.
Okay, so you can't eliminate that. I'm saying if it was not for that experience, would you have voted for her?
No,
If she didn't have that?
no, I would not.
Okay.
It's
Then you're
very
on.
difficult. This is not approving a neighbor is extremely difficult. And it's not something I enjoy doing. I know I'm going to meet her at an event that we sponsor here, or I'm going to meet her on the sidewalk. And I don't enjoy doing it. But that's what we're here for. We're here to have the best possible people serve on these boards. And in the year and a half that I've served as the mayor here, this is the first time I have said no. And I'm sorry to do that. But I believe that's my duty if I don't believe somebody is the right fit. So I apologize, Christine, for doing this. I have a partner. Somebody else doesn't believe that also. But, and I can be outvoted. That's fine. But I believe that's my duty to do what I think is best for our town.
Very good. I wanted to understand that.
Yeah.
Which I did not know and did not realize.
Okay, I mean, just in our short conversation and reading the document that we have in front of us, I think we can do better.
Mayor?
I think we should do better. Yes.
Yes, I was about 70-30 with 70% feeling we should approve her and 30% in reservation for her current personal building situation. However, with lack of other persons, I made the motion to move forward, but I can rescind that and establish a new motion according to protocol to work on the 5 and then withdraw Christine for perhaps a waiting period and see who else might step forward for that spot. So I'm happy to remake my motion, seeing as I had a few of those same feelings, but I'm also interested in moving forward on the boards. And we have put people on the boards in the past who seemed to come in with a personal experience, which led them to be interested and then worked out just fine once they got on the board and took a whole 8-mile up view of the town. So if she would end up in that sort of seat, fine. But if you and Commissioner David are severely concerned about this, then I'm happy to remotion and move forward as a full body here.
So you want to make a motion for the 6
For the 5.
or the 5?
I will
Excuse me.
rescind my previous motion and make a new motion, which would state that we approve the 4 readmitted persons to the board and approve Robert and hold off on the other vacancy until a later meeting date.
Fine.
Second.
Do we have a second on that?
Yes.
Okay,
She seconded.
Second.
Okay, all in
Okay.
favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
okay. Just for the record, we're approving resolution number 2021-030 appointing those members to the board for the code enforcement.
Correct.
Thank you.
And Mayor, if I could just implore the town manager to resubmit an existing vacancy on that, and then keep Christine's application just on file at the town, of course. But we would still have an outstanding vacancy.
Yep, we can, at the end of this, call through the applications and then move, based on their selections, move the group forward, another set of candidates.
Thank you.
Okay. Just hold on for 1 second, please. We might want to contact Bill Spruce, see if he's interested. Do we remember Bill Spruce, everybody?
Yes, you would ask.
I had asked him if he would be interested in serving another one because he was approved on appeals and that barely meets.
So if I could, your procedures that were approved by resolution, two quasi judicial committees, you have the right to do it, but it's generally not the preferred option to have two people serve on two quasi judicial boards.
Oh, sorry about
You
that.
could, if you move to do that, we have in the past, we said in our procedures that you can't unless the commission agrees to it. But generally we try to move away from.
No, I recall that. Yeah, that's a bad idea. That would be not good precedence, particularly gentleman that's not serving on any board at this point.
Right.
So we should hold off. Okay, moving on. This is consideration of resolution number 2021-031, ratifying the selection and appointments and term of office of members of the planning board and providing for an effective date. The town clerk's office has received 2 board applications for the town commission consideration. Currently, there is 1 open vacancy for a new applicant to serve as a member of this board. The applicants are David Powell from Ocean Cove and Barry Donaldson from Toscana North. We have the paperwork here. Is David Powell amongst us? Please come to the podium. David, is there anything you would like to tell us before we start asking you things?
Just that I have spent pretty much my entire career in commercial construction, in predominantly in mechanical, automation and life safety space, as well as some components of structural aspects of it with some very large corporations, both in a private and municipal environment. And recently made the decision to become semi-retired, and I'm looking for opportunities to give back to my community. And that's why I'm here today, hopefully becoming a member of the planning board.
Excellent. Why don't we start from the other side, Peggy, if you are ready?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Mr. Powell, David. Hey there. Ocean Cove, you're just south of me a little bit. How long have you been here, Lex? Sorry.
3.5 years.
Trying to see. I don't have a resume from you. So could you just expand on your construction background a little bit? Maybe what projects, or maybe your favorite projects, your least favorite?
Well, as I mentioned, I've spent, I think 35 years predominantly in the construction market, almost all of it with major players of Honeywell, Johnson Controls, United Technologies, and Siemens, that all focused on building automation, smart building, intelligent building space, as well as life safety systems. There were also aspects of it where we worked in environments in a performance contracting or P3 environments that also had us move beyond just mechanical and automation systems to look at more structural and or other aspects of building construction. So there's hundreds of projects, quite frankly, over the years that I've been involved with. And they've been both on a private and on a public basis. So very familiar with working with municipalities. And principally that's the experience. There was a short stint in oil and gas as well, but that's not really relevant for today's discussion.
Right, understood. And it's interesting. Where were the oil fields, just curiously? I see Western
Well,
oil
the
fields.
company I worked for was actually headquartered in Bakersfield, California. And before I started working for them, unbeknownst to me, Kern County is the largest oil producing county in the country. But the work that we did, principally, we supported the water management of a wellhead frac. And so we had over 60 locations domestically.
I stand corrected. Here is your resume. I was on the wrong page, so thank you. I
Gotcha.
thought I'd seen it.
All right.
Okay, got it. Thank you for that. And let me think. Now you can pair up with the other gentleman we interviewed. You have a black belt.
Well, a black belt
In what?
In Six Sigma productivity. It's a little bit different, but if you're familiar with
Oh,
Six
my.
Sigma, lean, yes, I have a black belt. Actually led that organization for a division of Honeywell for a period of time.
Got it. And then you seem very proficient in IT, looking at my notes from yesterday. You've got an amazing resume. Is there, what had you step forward to give us some assistance in a board? What propelled
motivated
you?
me?
Pardon?
What motivated me to do
Yes.
this? Well, as I mentioned, I recently made a decision to become semi-retired, and my wife, quite honestly, was looking for me to get out of the house. Busy.
It's always about the wife.
Well, that's not fair. It's not fair at all.
You too.
Okay, then.
But principally, looking to give back to the community and get more involved in the community that I live. And I, like prior people that spoke this afternoon, plan to, this is my home now. This is where, Highland Beach is it. We're not moving from here. And so I'm looking to be more involved.
Got it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's all from me.
Well, welcome, David. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming forward and volunteering. It's always great to have new people. So are there any specific concerns that you want to address while on the board?
No, there really isn't.
Okay.
There's nothing that motivated me beyond the fact of just trying to get involved in something that I had experience and thought that I could actually add value to the town.
So most of your experience is on the commercial side, correct? And our town is very much residential
Correct.
side. So any thoughts on that? I mean, I imagine a lot is pretty transferable.
It is. I mean, a condominium construction project would be considered a commercial construction project, right? So although it's a residence, it would still be commercial construction, although that is not an area necessarily that I focused in promise of my career. But the semi-retired part, I currently buy residential properties and renovate them and then either sell them or lease them. None of which are, by the way, located in Highland Beach. So there's no conflict there, but that's what I'm doing now. And it kind of, part of the desire to be in this, when I was, just a short story back in high school, I actually wanted to be an architect. And my mom is very artistic, master's in art and all that kind of good stuff. And my father, who is an attorney, sat there and looked at my test scores and basically said, if you want me to pay for college, you'll be a mechanical engineer. And so this is kind of my attempt to try to get back to the architectural roots with renovating homes and that kind of part of my life experience.
Well, I think your experience is excellent and perfect for the position. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Beth?
Yes, welcome. I believe that your background would work on the planning board because I think you bring something different to the table than what is already there, which to me is important because the planning board looks to see what direction this town is going to go in the future. So a lot of the other things really are not relevant, but you do bring a different approach to things. And Mr. Axelrod thought very highly of you.
Well, thank you.
That's what I just was writing down.
So I have no real questions. Thank
All right,
you.
thank you.
Johnny?
So you say you have 35 years' experience. That would mean that your parents are guilty of child labor laws. You look too young for that. And I'll have to admit, I'm glad that it's Six Sigma. We certainly couldn't have you on a code enforcement if you had a black belt, because people immediately would think, oh, we got two martial arts on the. Okay, so clearly you have a good background in all of this. So I'm going to focus more on how do we get people like you to come to town hall and even know who we are and what this is all about? Why did you do it? Have you had experience with other towns? Did you take that kind of initiative elsewhere to become familiar where people would know enough to stand there and submit to an interview on something like this? So help me understand how you came to that.
Well, I mean, my life experience in the past has been both, as I mentioned, in the public sector as well as private. So I've spent a lot of time in front of, municipal or state or federal government agencies and entities working various projects, particularly when you work in the P3 space. I mean, there's a whole host of trying to put yourself in a position to help actually a town as much as help, the enterprise you're working for. And so there's a lot to that. And I've always enjoyed it. And I think I will enjoy working on this committee and hopefully moving in being more involved in the town beyond this committee. I will tell you that I have had some experience with the town. I had when I first moved here, had a boat lift installed, and that was an experience.
There we go.
Took far much more time to get everything approved than I had hoped, but that wasn't because of the town. That was more of going through the Corps of Engineers and getting everything approved the way it needed to be approved. But it's just, I appreciate it. I enjoy it. It gives me purpose, and I'm looking to give back.
Well, Drexel University is an outstanding engineering school, and but you wanted to make the switch. So that's kind of interesting. One last question. As you look at Highland Beach and from everything you've heard, is there anything that you could advise the board about the town that we should know about?
I think that would be irresponsible of me to, before I've had a chance to really spend some more time understanding it. I don't know that I've really ever spent a lot of time understanding what the overall strategic plan for the town is. But I think once that's understood in the direction that we're moving in, I think I certainly can help, hopefully craft some of those thoughts of where we should move or where we can go. I mean, I think it's a great place. Really enjoy it. It's funny. I lived in Boca Raton first before we moved to Highland Beach, and my wife used to run on A1A. She's into physical fitness, and she would, when she get into Highland Beach, she just loved it. And, she'd always talk about it and how beautiful it was. And specifically the neighborhood we lived in, she would run by it and say, we should look in there one day. And we did, and we bought a home. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity, going forward. I'm sure that, once I have a better understanding of where the town's plan is in the town charter, we can certainly, hopefully be able to lend some insight.
Well, that's just excellent, and I appreciate it. And this is a good day.
We don't know your wife, but we love her.
I'll let her know.
All the right stuff. Thank you for applying, and thank you for your interest.
All right.
I have no questions.
Okay.
Okay. We know the next gentleman. Come on down. Anything you want to tell us, Barry, before I'm prepared. I got lists of questions.
Excuse me a second. I have to fight my hearing aids.
You
with
take
these,
your time.
masks. So you may have something I want
Yeah.
to hear. So let me,
The mask grabs it.
let me get that adjusted. Okay.
Yes, Barry Donaldson, 3700 South Ocean Boulevard, live in Toscana. Yeah, I've been a resident with my wife. Next year will actually be almost 2 decades. So we've been here for a while. And I've had the opportunity to participate in supporting the town in a number of ways and have greatly enjoyed it. I know you have my resume in front of you, so I won't try to repeat that. I thought it might be interesting, though, to just kind of give you a refresher on some of the more recent things I did, because I did have a very brief stint on the planning board before I was tapped to join the city commission and fill that unfortunate vacancy that occurred. But during the short time that I was on the planning board, we addressed a number of items. The first was we took the first look at the parking ordinance that was dealt with by the city commission eventually. That was the start of that. We reviewed the initial work on the site construction handbook that was subsequently adopted. We took a long, hard look at the coastal element for the comprehensive plan. And I spent a great number of hours helping to draft that component for my fellow board members for consideration. It eventually was adopted. We were charged with taking a look at the crosswalk issue and how to best proceed on that. And we also, as a result, actually of a no vote that myself and one other member cast on a site plan, started looking at exactly what is permitted to be built in side yards and what is not permitted to be built in side yards. So that was the initial effort that led to the new ordinances that dealt with that. So I know Commissioner Peggy had mentioned earlier to one of the other candidates, do you vote no? Yes, I vote no. I would even go back to the time I was on the Board of Adjustment and Appeals, where I was often the only no vote when those came up. And it is certainly important for the protection of the town to vote your convictions and say no when you have to. So I was quite often in the minority on some of those issues, but the 7 criteria to approve those I thought had to be honored, and you just shouldn't go outside those boundaries. So that during the short time, sorry, my phone rings through my hearing aids too. I hope you can't hear that. So during the short time I was on the board, I think we got a lot done. And we had, of course, also began initial discussions on the overall community improvements that eventually led to the vote on the 3 referendums for town improvements. So that was basically my most recent experience with the planning board. Based on a short time there, I'd very much like the opportunity to rejoin it and to contribute to the work.
Thank you, Barry. Peggy?
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, hi, Barry. Known Barry a long time since I first joined the commission in 2018. I do want to note, however, that the items you note as your planning board service times were actually ordinances and codes that the commission first discussed and passed on to the planning board. And we worked in conjunction with you. And they
Correct.
emanated from the commission at that time, most of whom are not serving anymore. And if you could update me, I just noticed on your resume, I hadn't seen this before, but you did work in South America. And if you could just reiterate your actual work in Florida and some of these other venues, something that we would note, something of note, your architectural
Yeah.
skills.
Well, the South America experience was a multi-use project in Sao Paulo, Brazil, that was constructed. It was about 500,000 square feet, shopping center, entertainment center, grocery store, kind of a mega mall kind of thing, but in a highly urban setting. Projects you might be familiar with in South Florida would include the Harbor Beach Marriott in Fort Lauderdale. That project was actually the one that brought me to Florida in the first place. I've done extensive renovations at Pier 66. I was one of the co-architects on the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Key Biscayne. Did some renovation work at the Eden Rock Hotel on Collins Avenue in Miami Beach. A great number of renovation projects at the local Boca Hotel. So those are some examples that you probably would recognize.
Got it. I know you were a big proponent of the 45 million referendum and which was soundly defeated.
Yes.
And I wondered if you learned anything from that and how you approach the town business now following that.
Yeah, I've learned to accept criticism gracefully and continue to push the truth.
Great answer.
That's it for me. I'll leave you in the hands of my colleagues and thank you for your past service and your honesty.
Thank you.
All yours.
Hey, Barry, yeah, I thank you very much for your past service as a resident of Highland Beach for a while. You know, I appreciate everyone who has come before me. But, you know, I guess I just wonder, what is your thought on having like new people in the town participate on boards and like rotating having different perspectives on that. I'm just curious as to what is your thought about
Well,
that?
Well, I think it's clearly a good idea. These boards are anything but static. There is turnover, there are vacancies, there are changes all the time. We have seen some boards go with vacant membership for extended periods of time, and it's not good. So it's always good to see people step forward and volunteer. That's an encouraging thing. So that's always good. It's always good. It has been a while since I served. It isn't like turnaround. There's been a pretty appreciable gap.
And what is, could you articulate for me, what is the reason for you wanting to continue to serve?
Well, that's in a nutshell, my father. He's always been an inspiration to me. He ran for public office in Kentucky and both representative in a different role, served in a appointive role as a magistrate for a while. He like me was never elected to public office. So sort of a family joke. But I lost him just shy of being 94 this summer. And he has always been the one that inspired me to public service and to step forward and always try to have a role where you're needed and where you feel you could best be to be of help. So I enjoyed being on the planning board. I think that's sort of in my wheelhouse, an area where I could do some good, and I'd like an opportunity to get back there.
Okay, and the referendum that was defeated, do you think that are you still in favor of pushing forward those types of projects for the town?
I think that we need to remember that this board is not just a board. It is also by ordinance the planning agency for the town. I think it would be a mistake for that group not to continue to question what should be done, when we should be doing it, and what kind of research do we need in order to understand it better. We may have taken too many big steps back then, but those steps are still going on. As you know, you recently received a resiliency report from a group. These things are always ongoing. This group, that planning group, needs to continue to take a hard look at those things and be responsive to them. They simply can't hide under a shell because of a popular vote on some referendums. You need to keep thinking. You need to keep consideration for what you've learned and what you need to do to keep this town healthy and thriving and independent.
Thank you. That's it.
John, let's move on to you.
So, Barry, I can say without equivocation, and I'm going to be very candid with you. In my experiences and involvement with you in the past, you have really taken incredible criticism, as well as I can imagine anybody, without getting really emotional. I'm amazed, frankly, that you could take the vitriol as often as you did without reacting emotionally to it. It's probably difficult for me to do, I can tell you that. So I really give you a lot of praise for that.
Thank you.
On the other hand, the stigma is the $45 million referendum. And that has created a lot of problems, not just for the town, for your role in that. And I think the perception of having you on the planning board for future town objectives, goals, plans would be a problem for a lot of people that are emotional, that are over the top, to put it mildly. Do I think that your qualifications are excellent? Absolutely. Do I think that you're smart, educated, articulate, knowledgeable about town government, about procedures and processes, and is the reason why I voted for you on the charter committee. Maybe the way you do things is a little different than what I would do, but I have a lot of respect for you. But I think looking at all of this, putting you on the planning board is going to be a real challenge. I'm not sure it's the best use of your skills. Not that I wouldn't support you for many of the other board positions as they may come up. I want you to know that right up front. But for the planning board, you're going to be a lightning rod. And I think that's a fair statement. Even with as much respect as I have for you, I think that would be unfair to you and to the town. And I mean that in all the best ways possible as an affirmation of, again, my respect for you and my acknowledgement of your experience, education, and so forth. But I'm not sure that it makes sense for the town to put you in that particular board.
I appreciate that, John. Thank you.
And thank you. I do appreciate your persistence and your resolve. You keep coming. It's awesome. I mean, what can I say? I'll pass it on.
Well, I would say just, very briefly that I've always reviewed these kinds of things more as questions of policy, not personality. And so that's part of why I'm able to, take the criticism, as I said earlier, take the criticism with grace, because I always saw that thing as a good public debate on policy, on the direction for the town. And that's really where I put my emphasis. That a lot of people decide to engage in personal destruction, well, that's their orientation. I feel sorry for them, but if that's their bent, that's their bent. Again, I feel badly for them, but
It is what it is.
that's how I view things, and not to get involved in this kind of personal destruction that does no one any good.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Hi, Barry.
Hi.
I really don't have any questions. Your background is flawless. Your willingness to serve this town is excellent. We have two very good candidates, quite frankly, and I'm going to be influenced in this case by David Axelrod's decision, because he's the chairman of that board and you have to work with him.
Mhm.
So, but thank you.
Okay. I appreciate that. I was disappointed to read David's statement because, again, he chose to engage in a personal attack that I thought was highly inappropriate, totally unfounded, and it was regretful to see. I was shocked that a chairman of a board who would make that kind of statement, but he did. So,
Well, I was more talking about the fact that he was looking for diversity on the planning board. That's nothing else in his report swayed me. It was the idea of diversity really is what led to my decision.
thank you.
The diversity, I'm going to just expand on that for those that are watching. The diversity is diversity of home location. There are already 2 people from the Descana development. This would be the 3rd from the Descana development. That in itself presents a significant issue. Just like from any single development, I'm at Boca Highland. There are 2 from Boca Highland on the commission. Having more than 2 from the commission would be inappropriate. There are 2 people from Bellito on the commission. Having more than 2 from Bellito would be inappropriate. I think the same thing applies to the boards. It's unfortunate because, Barry, your qualifications are second to none. I happen to know Barry personally a little bit. And not only are you a very smart guy, but I mean, you know the town, you got a great background when it comes to the planning board. You're an architect by trade. There's nothing that you don't know that would not help the planning board. I think the town certainly would like to call on you for other assignments down the road, for counseling down the road, if the commission decides to go in a different direction than you. Also, the commission has to take into account, obviously, the recommendation from the chairperson of the board as well. But there are also other boards besides planning. And as openings come, we certainly hope that you would look at those to help serve. So I don't have any questions. Obviously, I know you rather well. I know your service rather well. And obviously, the town thanks you for your service in the past, and we look forward to your continuing service.
It'll certainly be there.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
Appreciate
thank you. Okay, we have heard from both. If anybody has any additional questions from either candidates, now would be the time. If not, I look for a motion.
I move we pass resolution 2021-031, appointing David Powell to the planning board.
Second.
All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. You're all set. Thank you both for coming in, and congratulations.
I want you to know, Mayor, I appreciate the compliment. Obviously, it would be inappropriate for the 2 of you and inappropriate for the 2 of you, but that means I'm very appropriate. I'm from Boca. I mean, Highland Beach Club, you know?
Well, you could put it that way, or you could be the odd man out. Yeah, we have to be careful on people serving here that we really don't overload one community. And we're cognizant of that. So that's good news and that's bad news, because there are many times, you know, good people that could serve, but they're preempted by others that are already serving.
I actually think condo versus single family home is also an aspect to it, because I think you want some representations from both.
Oh, yeah, we need that
And I think that
balance
was
as
the
well.
other, that was another issue for me.
But,
as
you
well.
know, I don't want to get into a whole discussion and debate, but 40% of the commission is single-family homes. Well, single-family homes are clearly not 40% of the town. So it's never going to be a perfect balance, and we're cognizant of that, and we work with it. It's that simple.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you wouldn't want 80% of this, meaning 4 commissioners from single-family
Right.
homes, nor would we want the whole commission from condos.
Right.
But you know, it's not, we also can't control it. Okay?
Right.
What the voters do. But I think we got a nice balance, and we have good backgrounds here, and it works well.
And also, Mayor, townhomes, we have the boards and the commission is way more diversified than 3 years ago. And it's a credit to pat all of ourselves on the backs that we have come to that point and the people are stepping forward.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that we, as individuals, if we got out of balance on here, I think we would be cognizant of it and we would make sure that we considered that that's the way we were. And we'd be careful on the decisions that we make.
And I know we've said this already, but just the circulation of residents who have not been involved, who are now stepping forward. I think that's an important aspect as well, to get people who have not been involved, to get them into.
I mean,
these
this is
boards.
terrific.
It
We're
really
getting,
is.
we're getting new blood and we're
Mhm.
getting really well qualified people here. This is, I mean, it wasn't long ago, Peggy, that you and I were just killing each other trying to get people to come in. And this is really good. Okay.
It's
let's-
not just new people. I think it's qualified.
Right,
Yeah,
that too,
yeah,
that
very
too.
Because,
qualified.
there have been times in the past when people who might not have been qualified for a particular board were appointed because there was no one else to put on it,
Right.
and you needed a complement of people.
Look, we have natural resources coming up. We disbanded them. We put natural resources on the back burner and because we didn't have enough people to make a form. Well, now we're full.
Right.
It's great. And moving on, let's do it. Consideration of resolution number 2021-032, ratifying the selection of appointments in term of office for members of the Natural Resources Preservation Advisory Board, providing for an effective date. Town Clerk's Office received 2 board applications for the Town Commission consideration. Currently, there is 1 opening, 1 vacancy for a new applicant to serve as a member of this board. Applicant names are Marianne Radwan from Boca Cove and Nicole Stansfield from the Highland Beach Club. I believe that Nicole is here and Marianne was going to be on Zoom, but now she's not. Is that correct?
Correct. She emailed me this morning. She's not even in the area, so.
Okay, so she's not available on the
She's
phone.
not
either.
available.
Okay, well, Nicole, will you come up to the podium, please? And we have Nicole's paperwork here.
Okay, looks like I'm on. Good afternoon, Nicole Stansfield, yes,
Good
Highland Beach
afternoon.
Club, right next door.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And is there anything you would like to tell us?
From review of my documentation, you can see my undergrad was in Bachelor of Science with a specialty in environmental ecology. So at my bones, that's what led me to natural resources. But I think the other skills and my additional master's work in staff and organizational development and master's coursework in culturally and linguistically diverse populations, in addition to being a trained facilitator, staff development professional, are what really lend to this position. Because as I was saying, when I talked with the chairperson of that committee way back, it was like right after 4th of July. In order to make change, we have to educate. So I think my years as a professional educator, classroom-based, just as secondary science, all the way up to district level administration and federal programs implementation, I can be as passionate as I want about a topic. And I think when we come to natural resources and preservation of the beauty that makes this the community we love, but unless I can bring forth education and be open-minded to where people are at that moment and understanding what they bring forth and listen and educate them as to different points of view, we're not going to move forward. So I think that's a skill set that I have in different trainings from, yes, working with middle school children to educators K-12, to having to explain to educators from a federal point of view what the laws are and why we need to uphold the rights of this family or this student, and working with small businesses. And as I transition from educator to I need a change, but I want to take my skills and my passion and continue to coach and mentor individuals and work with small businesses so that they too can see the differences in their organization, to completely understand who and what their the different personalities are, so that they can move forward in a successful way. So that was what I thought I would bring very strongly to any committee in that form. But again, natural resources biology, that is my baby. That's what I've been born and bred to be in this world.
If it's okay with the commission, I'd like to go first.
Go ahead.
Okay. A couple things. Have you worked with groups outside of a closed environment, like outside of the classroom, outside of meeting rooms?
Again, as my information, my application indicated, I am presently just finished 3-year, and my former place where I resided was Colorado, and I'll back up and let everybody know that too. I am a newer resident here in Highland Beach, moved here in August 1st of 2020, but I served on the Landscape and Architectural Review Committee for our community back in Colorado, and was also on the HOA board, if that's what you're speaking to. But again, outside education, my business and what I was doing as a consultant was working with various small businesses and organizations across northern Colorado.
Have you watched many of the videos of past meetings of this board?
I was advised to do so by the chairman. So again, just watched in entirety to the August 11th committee meeting that they just had as they did their updates and their recommendations for moving forward. So yes.
So how many meetings?
I looked at some of the board meetings, but spent my most time reviewing in detail the Natural Resource Advisory Board Committee meeting, especially that last August 11th meeting.
What are your findings?
My findings are, like any organizational board, there are rules and structures in place to ensure that, again, passion has its place, but that the policies that are necessary to move forward are upheld, and making motions and upholding issues to move forward. And their topics, again, from a big topic in that last meeting was the beach buckets and the concern as to what was going on as it pertained to raking the beaches and the proper disposal of trash. But here's where we're running into. But what I was thrilled with seeing was the problem solving and the open communication and honesty that was taking place amongst those board members throughout that meeting, and facilitating next topics of interest as it pertained to natural resources, because it's above and beyond the beaches, and bringing in the idea of the mangroves and different pieces. So it spoke to me. It's like, these are the pieces that I'm interested in. This is why I moved to this area. I'm passionate about oceanfront. The mountains are beautiful, but my heart will always be in a coastal community, and wanting to be with like-minded individuals to work for the future of this environment.
And what do you think you can bring to it?
I think I spoke to that clearly when I started, that my background is in training as a facilitator.
Excuse me, I understand your background and it's very clear. The fit is perfect. But what can you add to this group?
I get just another individual who shares that mindset, shares that vision, is more than willing to work, do the research that's necessary. I thought it was an interesting topic as they started moving from the beach bucket conversation into an individual came forth with new ideas of how they wanted to talk about the intercoastal. Like, we have 2 coastlines here.
Right.
And the way the conversation circled, and I'm like, but sitting there eagerly watching, like, you're missing a point. Yes, it's the manatees and we love the animals, but I would be going through this in a different point of view of looking at what the mangroves did as it pertained to saving Florida $1.5 billion in damage from Irma. Like, you can't just go, well, we have to save the manatees. Even that might be where your heart starts to break, because we're naturalists. But if we're going to get the attention of other individuals and meet them where they are, sometimes that's where you need to start first. Let's look through the quantitative and qualitative data, not just our heartstring emotions, to present the facts as they may be, to get in different points of like, okay, so if we took this venue in this way, you want them to look into possibilities of creating more no wake zones. Just saying it's because it's good for the manatees, we know that, but we need to look at a bigger holistic approach into why this is going to benefit everybody and all those different points. So again, my long answer to this,
It's a good answer. Thank you, Nicole.
What I've always been talented and what I've always been told, and many things, I can see things holistically and get the big picture, but I'm very quick on, if we need to go here, this is where we need to start. And
spot on. Thank you. Peggy, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello.
hi, nice to
Well,
meet you.
nice to meet you. Thank you for your patience.
And please, the formal paperwork says Nicole, but it's Nikki.
Oh, Nikki, that's
No,
cool.
you wouldn't know.
Okay,
Thank
you have it in parentheses at one point. Thank you very much, Nikki.
Mhm.
And thanks for your patience and waiting through
No,
the
it was
other
good
board
because again, as a
applicants.
newer, again, been here just over a year. So this has been very educational experience for me
Great.
too, to meet and hear from community individuals. Thank you.
Great. I wondered why you moved. You said you're more of a beach person than a mountain. Is that what propelled you to move?
I was born in New York, went to University of Maryland on a limb, went out to Colorado in 1994. And it's been a good place for my husband and I, but it was always a dream to come back. When 1992, I took a trip with a friend to Fort Lauderdale. We rented a car one day, drove up A1A, and it's beautiful beach towns. And all of a sudden we came upon Boca. And as a 22-year-old, it was, what is this? And I said to myself, I'm going to live here one day. So when I started doing some research in 2019, came back to the area, and on January, February of 2020, working with my realtor, different people from New York who had relocated. I didn't know this existed. This beautiful little 2 mile, just over 2 mile stretch. So my husband and I both came and did research, and Boca is beautiful, but this was heaven. This was heaven. So we were just lucky in the middle of COVID, moving and rented first, then purchased.
I love you.
I love being on the beach. This is.
Does anybody else have any questions?
That could be our new town slogan. This is heaven.
It's a little slice of
There
heaven
you
here.
go.
You got it.
I think I hurt living here for the past year. I tell friends in Colorado, like, it hurts because I smile so much.
Yep.
I'm so happy to be here.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Peg.
It's okay, but do you have a black belt or any martial arts?
No,
Oh,
yoga,
darn.
no.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Meditation and yoga. So I can add
Okay,
to
well,
that
we'll
end
take
of it.
that. We'll get you some lessons with the previous two gentlemen. All right, that's cool. Let me get back to the seriousness if I can.
Of course.
All right, now you've got your science background, your
Mhm.
teaching, you've got a terrific amount of qualifications. Could you maybe launch into a little bit of how you see our environmental concerns and how we have on one hand, save the environment, we have sea level rise, we have seawalls being, imploded by iguanas and by the rising seas. And on the other hand, you have people who say that's not a problem, leave it alone. Could you give a little bit of direction as your philosophy on the two differing views of the environment and where Highland Beach fits?
Again, I think I alluded to that earlier, is we can't just let passions drive us. That's why we show up. But we have to do that deeper research and meet the needs of all individuals, because yes, again, dollars and tax dollars are going to be at the base of it. The idea of not at NIMBY, not in my backyard, like, okay, you need to meet people. These are not, nobody's coming forth with, I don't care and I don't want to see and I refuse. But until they understand what this change could mean and why just that little bit of change could impact for generations to come. But if it feels like something's being taken away from you, as human beings, we're guarded. We don't want to feel that we're the one, the finger being pointed at you and you're the cause of the trouble, but to, again, identify the issues, but ensuring that it's passion at the heart, but are we also using our data and facts and educating and meeting people where they are in a loving, calm way too, so that they can understand why this is being put forth.
Okay, thank you. Great answer. That's all from me, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you so much, Nikki.
Thank you, Peggy.
Hey, Nikki, welcome. Thank you for stepping forward and for volunteering. As I said before, it's so great to see fresh faces. I particularly appreciate your perspective on the data and analytical side of it. I completely agree. That is one way to really drill home, your message and to provide that support and evidence for your message. I think that's excellent. I guess I'm just curious, did you see that coastal resilience study that was presented for us? And do you have any?
Are you referring to what even the Coastal Star just reported on the Palm Beach County?
So yeah, there were several areas in South Florida that kind of
Pulled their
went in
resources
on
together,
a
yes.
coastal resilience study, and they presented to us sometime within the last couple of months and
Sure.
didn't know.
My
if-
knowledge at this point is limited to what was reported in the Coastal Star and then doing a little bit of additional Google searching. But again, since that work has been done, that would be right in alignment with the data I quoted earlier about the $1.5 billion impact of saving the mangroves. That's too can be found on the Nature Conservancy website, resources from research that was done by various universities as to why we should, instead of, again, save the mangroves because they're a beautiful thing and that's where the fish are hatching. Let's look at it through that point of view. But I could see all those pieces like, okay, what you're proposing and reducing the wake zone in order to improve the intercoastal waterway for the natural species that live there. But it goes in tangent with the research that was done just recently and put into the papers about why we need to care. Because of all the planning codes and buildings, right? Nothing is going to matter if the barrier island doesn't exist anymore. So it starts with understanding the natural resources and its impact above and beyond the beauty. So again, long answer, but I was made aware, and it was at the same time like frightening when you're a new member moving into a community and this is your passion and dream realized. But okay, but at the same time, on the flip side of that coin, they care enough to have commissioned the research and they have the data. So now what? So I think
Exactly,
that's
now
where
what?
it's the small, right? The think globally,
Right.
act locally. It's all these little commissions and boards coming together and sharing thoughts and ideas that are going to take that data and information and do something with it
Yeah.
for generations to come.
Yeah, exactly. When we were presented with that study, I felt a little lost, like, what do we do with that?
Mhm.
So I look forward to your contributions and helping us navigate through that. So
Thank you.
thank you. That's all I have.
So were you the one that called me when you first?
I
moved here?
emailed you.
Yes. Here she is. She's a brand new resident of Highland Beach Club. And out of nowhere, I get this text. Gee, I'm interested in the beach and what's happening on the beach and how come we've lost some of the sand out there? And, I've got an interest in, there you go. And she's only here a few hours, it seems. So has anyone ever told you that you have too little energy?
I'm frightening in Colorado. I do frighten them. They tell me I'm intense. I'm like, I'm a New Yorker. Like, I know you guys can rope bulls and all that, but I took you and left you in front of the bull on Wall Street. You'd be dead in a minute.
Well, I think we all love passion, energy, the background, the academics, the coaching, the training you've done, your interest in this specific area of discipline, and safeguarding this barrier island is very important. So, I mean, honestly, based on your academics, based upon your interest, based upon the energy that's coming across right through the plastic, I really don't have more other than to welcome you again to
Thank you.
Highland Beach Club and
Yes.
to the town of Highland Beach.
Thank you.
Hi, Nikki. I'm most impressed that you taught middle schoolers. I mean, boy, if there's anything
I
that's the
think I can even
worst.
get people to buy me
it's
drinks
them.
when I tell them that, yeah.
She
No, I
has
love
the
that.
energy to do
I
it. That's
love
the,
that.
I mean, wow. Yeah, I like the answers that you gave. I like that you get excited about things, but also that you want the information underlying it. I like the idea that sometimes you have to do baby steps.
Mhm.
And also sometimes people have to understand the limitations that we're functioning under. And in certain areas where people might want to see change, we don't have the authority to do a lot of things. I like being able to educate people when we do have authority to do things, because the only way we get it done is by letting people know we want to get it done.
Mhm.
So I would hope that you'd be able to work with PR firms that we might want to hire and to get people to recycle more, get people to pick up things on the beach more. I mean, some of it is limited. We have to remember all our beaches are private
Mhm.
and we can't do townwide things. Something like the beach buckets that we could do. Is there any one thing that in your mind you would like to see pushed forward a little bit?
I will go back to the commission meeting on the 11th, or excuse me, the board meeting on the 11th, where they started to explore different areas above and beyond the beach and what else should we define as natural resources? Because yes, it is above and beyond the beach. And I hope they do understand or continue to do that work on the intercoastal, because again, at the heart of it all, the mangrove, as we know, on both sides, it exists on both sides. So I don't think we all understand there is statute that says you cannot cut them down, which again, people are like, oh, I'm not allowed to cut. But I don't think, again, people understand why. Do they know right down to the bottom dollar of what this does above and beyond how they are necessary as filtration systems and the amount of biomass that they filter out of the water. But again, down to this island will not be here if they're not there. So that would be something I'd really like them to look at too. Again, as you mentioned, limited ability in what we can do, but with an educated populace who is voting in the individuals to oversee or putting it forth to state legislator proceedings, whatnot. If it doesn't start small at educating others so that they ought to see how this impacts me, then we wouldn't move forward. But I think mangrove preservation and the intercoastal waterway would be another big area to look at.
All right. Actually, I agree, and I live on the intercoastal, so I'm concerned about seawall height, that the sea is rising and we need to increase our seawall heights or people are going to be flooded out.
Yeah, my husband's in insurance, so I live with somebody every day. To get him to consider living coastal was like, please, So I get it. Again, but I think that's where we can go with it too, to create that understanding
You
level.
might be interested to know that most of the mangroves that are in this town are in fact owned by the county. So individual developers would not be able to do anything with them anyway.
But it's not just the developer coming in and removing, it's how we engage and as
are there things we can do?
Those who haven't, those who live here and how what we do every single day is impacting where our our drains and storm sewers are emptying into the intercoastal and the impacts. If again, it could be as harm. And we know, but like, well, what is just me washing one car in the parking lot at Highland Beach Club and I'm not using biodegradable soap? What's one car? Well, if you can educate others to the impact of what's one straw, one car wash, and how that can over time, the exponential impact of what that is doing. And it doesn't have to be somebody taking them out. They will die because of us. So again, just back to education, understanding, not judgment and pointing fingers and no shaming, but can you join me in understanding why this is necessary?
Thank you. It's a good answer.
Back to me, Nikki. Do you have any questions of us?
I do not. Again, I've been privy to sitting here through this whole procedure. So I feel like I've learned a lot about individuals, personalities, and backgrounds. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. My daughter-in-law graduated from Maryland in '93 also, but it's a big school, big
It's a very
class.
big school.
So I doubt that the two of you know each other. It's Michelle Geller. Highly unlikely. Okay, you can be seated.
Thank you so much.
We have
I have a
another
question.
candidate. Everybody has had the opportunity to look over her paper.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So I guess we have one vacancy. Is there a possibility to expand the board and add one more person? Or we can only choose one?
Look over here to my right.
It's, you can choose one.
We can only.
If you
choose
want to
one.
redo your ordinance, we can rewrite the ordinance.
No, I was just.
Go through that
Okay,
process.
That's
there's,
fine.
there's the answer. Yeah, we have two good candidates
know.
here. Would anybody like to make a motion? You want to take some more time, take a little time to read over the other one again? Oh,
The numbers.
it is number. You got to put your thing on.
I move that we approve resolution number 2021-032 and appoint Nicole Stanisfield to the Natural Preservation Board.
Second.
All in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, Nikki. You are now
Welcome.
officially on.
Welcome.
Thank you for applying, and we look forward to working with you. Great.
Mayor,
And welcome to paradise.
Yeah.
Yes.
while we're on the topic.
Pick up a bucket on the way out.
Sorry about that.
Yes, sir. No worries. While we're on the topic of this board, I just wanted to add to my fellow commissioners that there is a very terrific Boca Save Our Beaches organization of volunteers that I would like to, through Marshall Labadie, forward on to that board to perhaps tie into, since we share the beach at the end of the town here with them.
Ah, good.
So I'll do that tomorrow.
Very nice.
Okay. We'll move on now to public comments. Are you ready, Maggie?
So just for the record, public comments will be directed to the commissioners. And they have 5 minutes unless the commission decides to allow them more time.
Oh, Maggie can handle it in 5 minutes, right?
I got important stuff going on. Okay,
We know it's important.
okay,
Turn on your speaker.
it's on.
Okay.
Okay. I have a PowerPoint presentation
Ah, okay. Well, let's wait till it's
And a-
queued up.
and a handout,
All right, back
so I
up.
don't have to read to you.
Okay,
anything.
please don't start the timer until the PowerPoint comes up. That way you have the full time.
The handout is before you on the dais in front of you.
Okay.
There it is. Today, I'd like to talk about why we need a Marine Patrol presence on the ICW. Sure, all of you are aware that someone died August 29th, right at the end of my street on Bel Air Drive, due to boat wakes and traffic, too much boat traffic. And I've heard that the people that were on the boat hit a wake and the woman smashed into the seawall. And there were the kids, everybody was thrown out of the boat. So I was gearing this up towards manatees, as she saw at the last board meeting. But this has become more of a boater safety issue as well. So I've been talking to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, and they want to help us get through this. So I did my research, and one of the things that's most important is we need that boat, that Marine Patrol, in order to slow the wakes down on the intercoastal. Because without it, we can't write citations, we can't do a vessel traffic study, and we can't do a lot of things that we're going to need the data to back up our proposal and rule. So if you look at my presentation here, it says, how many people must die on the ICW before we get this approval from the FWC? The answer is they want to work with us. Next one, please. Oh, can you go back one? That's the dock at the end of Bel Air Drive. That yellow thing you see at the end of the dock, I took that from my backyard. That is the woman that passed away. So I'm trying to make an impact here. When I sent that to the person I'm working with at the Florida Wildlife Commission, he was like, oh my God, that was in your backyard. I said, yes, it was. Okay, next. Okay, so my husband, John, over here, he's like my co-conspirator working on this thing. Yeah, we were on our boat, just a random Saturday, 4 o'clock, about the same time that they had that accident. John and I were trying to figure out, okay, what is the signage entering Highland Beach? And we see this sign, and I've never even noticed it before since I've lived here in '86. Apparently, because that sign went up in 1997, it's faded. And according to the FWC guy, it's obsolete. They're going to take them down.
someday. There's a few around in the state of Florida, and there's one. So he looked it up with the little numbers on the bottom. He goes, oh, that's from 1997. And basically, it says that for the next 4 miles, boaters are responsible for their own wakes because there is a congested area for the next 4 miles. And I'm thinking, okay, what does that mean to me as a boater? Okay, you go under the bridge, it says 25 to 30. 25 during manatee season, which is covered under the rule, the FAC rules 68C. And then you go 30, which is covered under 68D for boating restrictions for the rule. So it changes depending on the season. And they're giving just 5 miles per hour for manatees who happen to be swimming across the intercoastal. So they've slowed it down 5 miles. So that's what we have. We have that and 25 to 30 miles per hour. Now, the intercoastal was made for commercial boats. And John and I have witnessed this when you have BK Marine or one of those people working on seawalls, they get swamped. I mean, if you're going 25, 30 miles an hour and one of those big rigs, I mean, it's basically, the thing is going like this. So even commercial boats would benefit from a little slowdown. So we're going to continue having this chaos and damages on our waterway if we don't do something about it. Next one, please. Okay, we all need to share the waters of the ICW. On weekends, no one is safe. So this is a nice picture I took right off my boat. There's a boat passing John and I, and he's going way faster than the speed limit. And I don't know if you can tell in the canal, there's a paddle boarder there, right? Can you see him?
Yeah.
Okay, that guy didn't have a chance. So I'm in sort of like the right-hand side because that's how you're supposed to drive your boat, on the right-hand side. This guy's passing me to my right, very close to the seawall. I've got boats passing me on the left-hand side because John and I have slowed down for that paddle boarder. But do the other people care? Absolutely not. So that's an example of how everybody's driving down the ICW. You need a police boat there to stop this kind of crazy behavior. Next slide. Okay, so this is a picture from the back of my boat. John and I just went under the bridge and look at all those maniacs, okay? That's our wake. Now I'm going 15 and that is a tremendous wake. I'm not going 25. I'm going way under the speed limit. And look at that. Look at the wake that I'm pushing out. Now these guys, the ones that think, okay, I'm going to pass her on my port side. So I'm thinking, okay, so that guy on the port side, which is the far right of that picture, he's already in the lane of people going south. So if you're on I-95, let's say it's a 2-lane road, he's on the wrong side of the intercoastal. He's closer to the Boca side now. So according to this thing I wrote, they do have a chance of going 25 to 30 miles per hour through one of the narrowest. Now I use Google Earth and I took pictures of different parts of the intercoastal on my phone, and they have a measurement tool. And you can put 1 point here to 1 point over, and you can tell how wide the intercoastal is. The narrowest part is in front of the that hotel, the Sands Hotel, you know, right there where you see the boats go, and Bel Air Drive and Russell, those little areas. And then you have the mangroves that you were talking about. That's where the sanctuaries, that's where you have the manatees and all the animals, the sea turtles trying to cross over. Okay, so you could go on Google Earth and just randomly figure out how wide the intercoastal is. And in most areas, it's under 320 feet across. Okay, next one. Okay, so these people pass us dangerously on our starboard side, which is close to the seawall. And when I took that picture, they were passing the exact spot where the woman got killed, a month and a half ago? And these people were all going, woohoo, thinking that was just so much fun. We are just hauling butt through Highland Beach because we were slowed down in Boca, or if you were up in Delray, we were slowed down, but Highland Beach is now I-95. So lucky for them that we had slowed our boat down, or our wake sort of probably pushed them against
Hey,
that. seawall.
Maggie, it's already been 10 minutes, so you
Okay.
have to get to your conclusion.
Okay, my conclusion is, next slide. I think it's over. There's a dead manatee. Not only is it the boats, but we have the dead animals. I took that picture on the ICW. Next. We need a patrol boat. We need a marine patrol boat. Otherwise, we can't slow the boats down. So what I've given you in your package is pretty much the ordinance, the criteria on how to accomplish this. I will meet with Lieutenant Hartman to discuss how to write the citations. I have the Hallandale study, which is what the FWC told me to use that as a guide to get this done, and we can get it done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Please stay. I think you're going to like the report you hear from Chief Hartman. Is there anyone else that would like to make any comments during this time period of open remarks? If not, we will close that section and move on. Go right ahead.
Please step to the
come up here.
microphone and state your name.
Make sure the speaker is on. Press that button.
Is it on? Yes.
Okay.
My name's John Chapelier. I'm Maggie's husband. And I just wanted to add that when we originally got involved in this, we had a Zoom meeting in which we had the Florida Freshwater and the Florida Police and the Corps of Engineers. Everybody was on that call. And they all said, oh, you really can't do this. The only way you can slow down boats is if you can show that the manatee population is in danger, and that requires a big study. Well, now they have all changed in the since the accident at the end of our dock. They have all changed their position. Now they are actually cooperating and say the way to go here is give some tickets, show the boats are speeding in this area, show that 300 feet is too narrow an area for two-way traffic doing 35 knots, 60-foot boats. And I think we really have a good shot at it. I don't think this is, maybe in the past it was too difficult because we didn't have the impetus we have now. But right now, you have a moment in time when I really believe you can get this done.
It's a shame that it takes a fatality to open their eyes or ears to this. But again, I think you're going to like what you hear later on.
Mayor Hillman, this is
Yes.
Lynelda. Just want to bring to your attention the email that I sent you all yesterday from Ms. Barbara James. You all
Yes.
received it via email.
Would you like to read it into the record, please?
Sure, if you would like me to.
Please do.
Okay, this is an email from Ms. Barbara James. And it reads as follows. As respects the Natural Resources Preservation Advisory Board's discussion and recommendations resulting from their August 11th meeting, one of the lengthier items was the comments about the beach cleaning, beach raking. I felt their frustration in their conversation, and I thought perhaps the following might help. There are 2 seasons of beach cleaning. One, turtle nesting season, March 1st to October 31st. And 2, non-turtle nesting season, November 1st to February 28th. The rules that apply for mechanical beach cleaning during these 2 seasons are completely different. In addition, the beach cleaning is not a Town of Highland Beach government project. The cleaning is contracted by each property privately and paid for directly from property owner to vendor. There are a certain percentage of properties that do not have their beachfront cleaned. Several years ago, under the former commission, the topic was heavily addressed, and it included the 2 vendors who are licensed with a DEP permit to clean our shoreline here in Highland Beach, both Universal Beach Services and Florida Beach breaker came to a meeting and discussed, presented what they do, how they do it, why they can't do it. It was quite helpful and clarified many of the questions that the advisory board members and commission were not familiar with at that time. I would like to make a recommendation that may save the new members and the newer commission members time and confusion. Is it possible to have the two companies attend either an advisory board meeting or a commission meeting to explain their work, their restrictions, their reasons that Highland Beach is raked the way it is, and do a Q&A? So much of what is being discussed and asked is because of a lack of understanding of the rules, regulations, assumptions, and requirements. In reality, in 39 days, October 31st, we will be entering the non-turtle nesting season, and the cleaning and raking will be allowed over the entire beach. In parentheses, it reads, with a year-round restriction to avoid all native salt-tolerant dune vegetation by a minimum of 10 feet. Perhaps make an invitation after the turtle season has ended. Just a thought. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you want us to invite them in, the rakers, to bring us up to date on what their requirements are, restrictions are, et cetera? If
I'd
we're
like to
getting
see
questions, you'd like to hear that?
I would.
I
Yes.
don't think it can hurt, and I think that we need to invite the members of the Natural Resource Board to come and hear it as well, so that when they make recommendations, they understand where they can and can't go.
Okay, Marshall's making a note right now. Okay, so at their leisure, doesn't have to be immediate, but whenever it works for them. Okay, Marshall?
Yep.
Great. Okay, thanks for reading it in. Any other public comments before I close it? No? Okay, public comments are now closed. Announcements, board vacancies. Pleased to announce that there are none. Okay, I think this is the first time ever. Whoa, a minute.
Yeah, how about
Whoops, we have one?
One we didn't fill.
We do have
the
one.
code enforcement?
We'll reach back out to the other applicants and see if they're interested, then requeue that group back up through Mr. Burnich and then bring
Right.
it back to the committee.
Okay, so we have one. That's still a first. Meetings and events, September 30th at 9:30 is the planning board. October 5th is the town commission meeting at 1:30. October 7th at 9:30 is Board of Adjustments and Appeals. October 10th, Town Hall is closed, observance of Columbus Day.
Correction, it's October 11th. I revised the agenda. Sorry.
Okay, 11th. October 12th is code enforcement, at 2:00. October 14th at 1:30 is planning board. Let's go back to the October 5th meeting is town commission. We shouldn't have it on October 5th. It's my birthday.
You can make a motion to cancel
You're
it.
gonna
We'll be
make me
glad.
work on my birthday?
No, we'll have it with cake.
They
Okay,
say I make a motion, we have cake.
if we have cake, then it's
Cake and
fine.
ice
There you go.
Okay. Board action reports, there are some in there, it's just for our information only. Move on to ordinances. Oh, before we do that, remember we have another meeting at 5:01. So if we want to take a break, this would be an appropriate time before we get into the ordinances. The only thing is to take a look at what's in front of us. I guess we don't have to have it finished by 5:01. We can come back to it. But this would be a good time for a break if everybody wants one. Yes? Okay.
Could I just make a comment before?
Of course.
We leave, just for your benefit, since they're still here. I just wanted to reinforce one point that you did not mention. I mean, the manatees, safeguarding them, the speed, the accidents, harmful accidents, death, the danger for small vessels, whether it's a kayak or whatever. But what I've learned, having now spent some time in the past 3 weeks talking to various owners and condominium residents and owners on the Delray side of the intercoastal, that they've been waiting for years to reduce the speed limit because the wakes are killing them on their walls. And it's not so much that way you could say, oh, but there's cement walls, but the point is they don't want to put in boat lifts because if they have a boat there, unless they have one that can lift the boat completely out of the water, they get slammed against the walls all the time. So it's a danger for their own boats, it's damage, and they don't want to do it. Yeah, I understand that, but I can tell you that from a resident support on both sides, it's
Okay,
absolutely
if I
something.
can interrupt, there's a whole conversation coming up on that later
Okay.
on the agenda. So, okay. Now, please, we're going to break, so you guys can talk about it as much as you want. Okay, so we're going to take, I'd say, about a 20-minute break so people can grab their stuff. Okay, thank you. to allow for a longer period of time between qualifying and the election, providing for severability, the repeal of laws in conflict, codification, and effective date. First reading was August 17, 2021. We need a motion to move forward on this.
I move that we approve ordinance number 2021-010 on the second reading.
Seconded.
Okay, we need a oral verbal vote.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Yes.
Commissioner Gossick-Simon,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Hillman,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, moving on to page 97. This is proposed ordinance and ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, amending the administrative amendments to the 7th 2020 edition of the Florida Building Code to provide for reinspection and recertification of existing threshold buildings, providing for the repeal of all ordinances in conflict, providing for the severability and codification, and providing for an effective date. We will turn it over to our master.
Thank you. Jeff Ramus, building official, Town of Highland Beach. So at the July 13th commission meeting, Mayor Hillman added an item to the agenda related to the creation of a building recertification program in Highland Beach. Considering the recent tragedy that occurred in Surfside, Florida, the town has begun research towards adopting a building recertification program. So after 2 rounds of comments, the following ordinance is being submitted to the Town Commission as a first read.
Oh, you're finished. Time's up. Thank you for coming.
The proposed ordinance will require recertification inspections for all threshold buildings within the town limits, and that'll be by an engineering firm, threshold inspectors, not by the town itself. The recertification will be required when a building reaches 25 years of age, and then again after 10 years until the building is 40, at which point it'll be every 7 years, which is more consistent with the 7-year painting that they go through. Consistent with routine painting and caulking intervals, the Town of Highland Beach Building Department, as directed by the building official, will administer the recertification process, but not perform any inspections. The inspections will evaluate the structural and electrical components of the threshold buildings, and the administrative review and compliance requirements are all specified in the new ordinance. Concerning fiscal impact, the cost of implementing and maintaining the program will be covered by program fees, which is still yet TBD, which we didn't really discuss yet.
Jeff, I meant to ask last time and it just passed. I assume the program fees would be people that are deficient in getting their reports in on a timely basis.
Very possible.
Are there any other program fees?
There's nothing that was built into the fee schedule for this.
Can you think of any other fees that there would be involved here other than deficiencies?
Other than deficiencies, well, when you say deficiencies, it would be when we do not accept a report because it doesn't meet our minimum administrative guidelines. But I think they would have to be at the level before they go to the in front of the code board.
So that would be after 3 shots.
Which would be after 3 submissions that were found to be not in compliance. So right now, this just puts a lot of work on my plate, and the increased costs will be honestly what I have to pay to cap government to cover in my absence, some of the plan review and inspections. We really didn't discuss creating a fee for this.
Right.
We were really more worried about the meat and potatoes, and right. I'm going to assume that maybe this is something that we can look at just by resolution, just changing some of the fee schedule that we have in place before the second reading, if and when we get to that point.
Before the second read or the effective date, if you wanted
Or
to
the
hold the
effective-
effective date to be not immediate, but 45 days from second read, then you could do something in that window.
Well,
But with
second
the
reads
program-
second reading will be around the corner, 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, but you don't have to do it effective immediately. You could, put 45 days, it becomes effective. January 1 is the effective date.
No. We want this effective right away.
So then we will come back with a fee schedule, if you want fees.
Do we want fees? Jump in.
I think only for deficiencies. I think at this point in time, when we want to encourage compliance, I wouldn't put a fee schedule in, except the deficiency, which if they don't at least start the process within 365 days, then it becomes a deficiency.
For sure.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent approach. You don't want to have it be viewed as a penalty up front, but at the same time, it is a penalty if they don't move forward.
Mayor, I
Anybody
brought
else?
this up, I think, a meeting or two ago, and I just wonder about the level of staff time that might be incurred, phone calls, emails, plans. It would be up to Mr. Remus, but I think down the road, it may show that we are using a lot more
Well,
valuable
there-
time of our
there-
staff
there-
than we might
There
know right
clearly
now.
is an out-of-pocket
Yeah,
cost here.
yes.
It's not just an overhead.
I'm expecting that our building department will be, in fact, pushed a little bit for time and work element, and we may need a broader fee schedule. But if you want to wait and see how it goes, I'm fine either way.
Yeah. I mean, the question really becomes, do we want to eat it or do we want to pass it on?
I don't know.
You have an opinion?
I don't know.
Yeah, I have a question.
Maybe eat it.
Based on what you said, are you saying we have to come up with a way to finance it somewhere? Like we're gonna have to raise some fees somewhere else in order to cover for this?
No, I'm not saying we have to raise. We may consider just having a recertification fee. But when you really want to think about this, if this is going to increase the amount of restoration work being done, they're going to be pulling a permit to do
Yeah.
that work.
And
And
that's-
those
that's where we get
permits
our
are
money.
going to generate a significant amount of revenue at, 2.5% for the first 500,000 and 2% after that. So in all honesty, I would maybe want to sit on this for fees and just see, because right now we appear to be in pretty decent shape. And if we have an increase in amount of restoration projects, which are pretty high value, then I don't see any reason to burden the residents with further fees if there's adequate fees to cover our operating expenses based on permits coming in.
I'm totally there. I mean, I never anticipated a fee for any of this.
Right,
That's kind of what we're here for as the town.
that's right.
Yeah, I just want
We
to
all agree?
clarify. So there is, I think you were saying that it's taking you away from other work that you're doing. And so therefore, I'm not that familiar. I haven't studied the building department's financials, but I guess you have enough extra reserves or whatever to cover what I thought you were alluding to, which is that it's taking you away from other things. And so therefore that incurs costs.
I like where your head's at, and I would contend that having the reserves for this purpose is exactly a perfect opportunity, because a lot of those fees
Touche.
are generated by the commercial project side or the condo side of things. So
Yeah.
using those dollars to carry out this program, I think is a really smart move. And it doesn't, if all of a sudden we said you got to pay $5,000 to be recertified based on how much time he's going to spend on each one, I think we might get a lot of resistance versus they're already going to be incurring a lot of costs. And
And it's totally unnecessary. For every $1 million worth of work they do, we get in just under $25,000. It's not necessary.
So that's why you're saying sitting on it, that we'll see
Yep.
how much more is generated because of this process, and that could be enough. And in the meantime, I guess there's enough reserves in the building department that it would cover whatever work there is.
Yes, Vice Mayor, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so we're all in agreement,
Okay.
correct? Okay,
And that's why I put TBD, because I didn't know what the intent was. Okay.
done.
Attachments, of course, you're going to see what's already in the packet. And as far as the recommendation, staff recommends the approval and adoption of the recertification ordinance as presented. Now, the first two times that I presented this, I had a PowerPoint presentation. I don't want to beat to death because we only had some minor changes after the second time we spoke. So I'm just going to highlight some of the more recent changes. And if you have any questions, feel free. And if necessary, we do have the ability to bring up some of the pages from the PowerPoint if necessary. I don't know the page because it's been changed, but in the actual ordinance itself, where it says section 3, and that then it says 110.9 recertification of building and components. If you go down to 1A, under building age, we did some clarification after speaking with Attorney Len Rubin. And it says that the building age shall mean the period since the issuance of the original certificate of occupancy. And the reason why we changed that was because a building may have been repurposed. So it may have been a hotel.
Good idea.
And then it was repurposed, okay, into a condo, which we have in the town, or where adequate records are not available to determine when the original certificate of occupancy was issued. So we cleared that up, okay? This is just an FYI, and I don't like to be here at the 11th hour, but it just, when we talk about threshold buildings, this actually would not cover the Delray Sands. This Delray Sands would not be covered under this because it's only 3 stories.
Yeah.
Okay, so it wouldn't have a recertification process. So I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. Okay.
Before you flip the page,
Yeah,
go back.
I knew it.
Item C. You knew I was going to ask you about this.
C,
Yeah, bottom of the page.
C for me is on the next.
110.9 C. 1C.
Yep.
Last paragraph, beginning on.
Yep.
Okay, the beginning on dash, effective date of ordinance. The next sentence, the building official shall establish a completion schedule for recertification, which shall be based upon factors that may include, and then it articulates the different things. Does this mean that you're going to establish a date for each building?
That's pretty much what it means. And it may not be for each specific building, but it's going to have to be actually for each specific building because I have recently, just a few days ago, last week actually, received an update from the county with original dates of construction to make sure that it coincides with what we were able to pull from the appraiser's office.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to send out letters to each and every one of them. And we're going to have to, I have to take the time to sit down and go through this and look at the oldest buildings and put them in a list of priority
Okay.
based on year of construction.
And based on, that's the only thing. This says it's going to be based on age, location, construction materials, occupancy load, function of building.
Yes.
You're going to consider all that stuff?
Yeah, I have to. It's in the ordinance and it makes sense to do
Well,
that.
no, this is the ordinance.
Right, because if I have 2 buildings that were both built in 1960 and one is on the ocean and one is on the west side of A1A.
Yep.
Then I'm going to put a priority on the one built on the ocean versus the one on A1A. If we're
Okay.
trying to, fit everyone in, I mean, they're all going to be relatively close.
Okay, so-
If
well, then stay
if it's
there.
a super high rise,
No,
it's
no, stay there. So they're both 12-story buildings and they both have an occupancy of 100. One's on the east side, one's on the west side of A1A. What are you gonna do? What are the dates? How many days out? How many months out are you gonna give them?
I did not sit down to try to figure out how this is all going to plan out until we go ahead to put this into place. Like if we have good forward motion on the first read, then
Oh,
that's
you're
when I'm going to
get
take
a-
the time
You're
to
gonna get a
start.
go-ahead on this read.
Okay.
I want to know what you're gonna do.
Well, I will have an answer for you and I will probably have a list for you for the second read. Absolutely. But there's some other things that I will take into consideration if I've had compliance with pulling permits in the past.
No,
and other items like
I
that.
like this a lot.
Yeah.
And I think what you're putting in here is terrific because they are different, no question about it.
It gives us flexibility.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you're going to set up certain criteria and then you're going to stick to it, obviously.
Well, we have to be consistent.
Totally,
100%.
totally. I think it's terrific.
I'm
Okay.
confused. Didn't we say that the recertification papers have to be in by 365 days after they receive a notice?
Yes.
Yeah, he's now going further. He's changing from that to this.
You go, well, and actually though, it seems to me this would really only apply initially.
Yes, putting them in
Just-
order the very
just-
first time. It's
Just
a
the first
one-time
time.
deal.
So after this is done, this really wouldn't apply at all because it would be every 10 years at the same time or 7 years, depending on the age of the
Yeah,
building.
It
Yeah.
makes it easier, right? It makes it easier to
Okay.
put it together unless we have another, building, another threshold building built.
Okay,
Then that
now,
goes into the
Well,
queue.
but couldn't you deal with two at a time? I mean,
Oh,
if
we
there
can
were
deal
two
with,
buildings.
I can have, 10 a month if we need.
Okay.
yeah,
But,
well, once you set up your matrix, send it to us. Don't wait for the second read. Because if we don't agree with it, the second read's out the window.
Right.
And then we lose a lot of time. So send it out as soon as you get it and get comments from us.
Absolutely.
Another question. Do the structural engineers report and the electrical engineers report have to be submitted at the same time, or can they be submitted as they're completed?
Great question.
It's a recertification program. They really should be resubmitting them both at the exact same time to us. I don't really want to piecemeal this because the date received is the date received. So in my opinion, the way I'm reading this, if you submit the electrical, but you didn't give me the structural, it's incomplete. I'm not going to accept that yet. I want it all at the same time.
Then stated in the ordinance.
Yes.
You want them both submitted at the same time. So that if they get it, meaning a building gets one but not the other, they hold on to the first one until they get the second one.
Right.
Well,
And I think that's my interpretation because you have to submit your report.
Well, it has to be very clear. These people don't generally get this kind of stuff. So I think it should be stated in here, both reports are to be submitted together.
Joint submission.
Okay, also, I have a point. You're talking about schedules for repairs. Now, I'm assuming that these are essential repairs, that you're not going to tell them when they have to have non-essential repairs done if the inspector says, look at this again in 5 years. There's a problem here, but you don't have to deal with it right away.
Right. So all critical safety structural repairs, the timeline is supposed to be laid out by the engineering firm. They're supposed to say, this should be done, this should be done by this amount of time. In other words, they're not going to get to waterproofing, painting and caulking until the second
Sure.
year, but immediately we need to take care of this. But we also don't need this to drag on until the next one is due. So at some
Yeah.
point,
Oh, no.
we do have to put a foot down and say, you can't just say, well, we just completed it last month and now our 10 years due again. It took us 10 years to do it,
I also was wondering if we could put something in about economic hardship on non-necessary repairs or non-immediate repairs.
Why?
I missed that. Where is that?
It's not in there. I'm suggesting it.
Oh, no wonder I missed it.
It was just something that occurred to me as I was reading it, that it's one thing to say, if it's a health safety issue, you've got to do it right now. But not all of these buildings have a lot of resources. And it may be that they need to put off non-essential, non-real safety issues for a year.
so they could put in for an extension for the ordinance.
3 times.
No, they could resubmit 3 times. I think, let me go back to the other page, stand by. What? They have 365 days from the date of notice of the required, which to correct the deficiencies. Basically, we are telling them in the ordinance that they have 365 days to complete it. And honestly, when you look at it this way, I have to let them know when 365 days in advance when the report is due. So now they have an entire year to get the ball rolling. On that 365th day, by then they should have submitted the report. When we receive and accept the report, they then have 365 days to complete repairs. However, anything that's major structural needs to be on a faster timeline will be specified by the architect or engineer. That is a threshold inspector, for that firm.
You just answered my next question,
Okay.
because it wasn't clear to me whether it was the same 365 days or the next 365 days.
Right. And the ordinance also gives the building official the ability to extend the amount of time for repair, which could be something as, hey, this is not essential, this is an issue.
Yeah, I mean,
And we can extend it from there.
I'm not suggesting that if the structural engineer says you've got to get this done within 6 months,
Period.
that we don't adhere to that. I
Right.
mean, but there are certain things that just aren't essential to do immediately.
Yeah, cosmetic cracks.
Yeah, cosmetic cracks.
Besides the list of order, Jeff will put together a flow chart so you can see the process. I think will be helpful to see it visually along with it in writing, so you can see how a community moves through our process.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Can I go back on the same page to paragraph B? It says 25 years as provided, and then intervals of 10 years. I'm wondering, why have intervals of 10 years? Because that means 25, and then at age 35, and then, wait a minute, 40? So that's 5 years.
Providing we're dealing with buildings that are at the exact same age. Right now, most of them are so old, it's not going to matter. Most of them are going to be at
Right,
every
doesn't
7 years
matter.
anyway. And the ones that are 25 years are going to be, we're talking about a minimal amount, but
Half a dozen?
right. But
10?
again, if it's 25 and it goes to 35, the next one's not due until 45 because it already had it.
Well,
And
no,
then
but
now
I
it's gonna
thought
be
you were
every
saying,
7.
no matter what, all buildings will be
Initial.
done at 40.
Well, the 40, a younger building will be done. It'll be done by 35. If it's 25, then 35. And then the next one's going to be at 45. It was already done. So then once it hits 40, once it gets 40 or more, then it reduces to every 7.
So the 45 becomes 52.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Or do you want to just specify what the intervals are? 25, 35, 40, 45. is really-
Yeah, we have too many buildings that are different ages and it's,
But I'm saying, why not have everybody go on 25, 35, 45? I know that's 5 years longer than, say, the 40-year mantra rule of.
Well, it's okay. You're getting hung up on the
When it
number
starts.
40. So if the building is 38 years, it doesn't get done, it gets done at 38, then it doesn't get done again until 48.
correct.
All right.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
55 after that.
Yeah,
No,
Uh,
1024
When-
hike.
then 63.
When you set up this,
All right.
when you set up this flow chart, how would you handle if the engineer says, look at this again in 5 years?
Well,
Because then they're not saying,
well, that's not a full
Really?
inspection. That's an item he wants to look at, a specific.
yes, oh, no, not the complete inspection. I'm talking about a specific item.
Yeah,
Where they
check
go
this
and they talk
column.
about all the deficiencies in the building, what's wrong. They may say that this particular item is something to keep an eye on and look at it again in 2 years or 3 years or whatever it is that they decide that it needs to be
Yes.
looked at again.
stick
Well,
it
that's
in
actually a great
follow-up and you
question.
look at
Yeah,
it.
it's a great question. And the ordinance doesn't specifically address that, but I would think that we would have now we're aware and we can put it in a particular file and just say, hey, per your previous inspection, your engineer says, look at this in 5 years. So
Okay, but I think we have to codify that because it needs to be in here someplace. We would like to make things so people know what they're expected to
But
do.
wouldn't it be similar to a work item if the engineer says this is immediate, you have to hit immediately? The other things, they put a schedule out and we're just accepting their schedule.
Well,
So if
but
they say
some-
come back in 5 years, it's on that original.
I mean, it's like you go to a doctor and you get an exam and they say, okay, you passed, come back in 5 years.
Well, you're right in what you're saying. No question. It's clear cut. Here's the however. How much babysitting should we do? We're gonna check it in 7 years. Now, if the engineer says 2 years or 5 years or whatever, we're gonna remind them. Is that our responsibility?
Oh, no, that's their responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that we wouldn't be able to set up a timeline for when things would be done, because maybe if they come back in 3 years, it still doesn't really need to be done. The inspector says, well, you can let it go another 2 years.
It'd be a nice thing to put it in our follow-up. I don't know that we put it in our
Unless
ordinance,
you could
because
set
once
up
it's
a-
in our ordinance, we've now taken some
You
responsibility
could set up a
here.
tickler
And
system.
I don't think, Glenn, we want to do that. Glenn's saying, nope. All right. We don't want
So,
to take the responsibility. We don't want to
because
put
the
it in the
tickler system
ordinance.
would let you know that something is coming
Yeah,
up.
but we don't want to have to manage.
We don't want it in the ordinance.
But maybe what we want to do is go back and inspect to see if it's been done.
Not in the ordinance. In our follow-up file, sure. But not in an ordinance.
I think administratively, we can handle it without having it in the ordinance.
Good.
Because we're going to know that.
That's a
the-
good
the engineer
neighbor thing
says,
to
"Hey,"
do.
So administratively, I believe we can handle it without having to codify it into an ordinance.
That's a win-win then, okay?
Yeah,
Which would
I'm good with that.
Avoid any litigation liability.
Yeah, now we're thinking right. Yep.
Yeah, I guess I have a question about that. So it says major or critical deficiencies shall be highlighted and the engineer shall provide recommended timeline for such repair. So let's say like in this example, so let's say the recommended, I don't know, timeline is 2 years. So how does a building, they open up a permit, right? To start this. So then the permit would be open for 2 years or something like, yeah, how, let's say there was a critical, let's say it's called a major, it is a major or critical deficiency, but the time, I don't know, is this even possible? The timeline's 2 years, let's say? So
Not
what
yet.
Not
happens?
on critical.
That wouldn't happen.
No.
No.
That would never happen.
No, if
Okay.
there's something that's critical, they're going to need to address it immediately. Just like right now, one of the buildings has temporary shoring on at least 2 stories of a garage, that there's posts literally every 3 feet. They have vertical support posts holding up the garage in a particular, in an area. And that's like emergency shoring until they can get to the repairs. That's taking the place. People can't park in those areas, it really inconvenience. When you have to add temporary shoring because of an immediate problem, people want it fixed quickly because they have nowhere to park. That's typically what it ends up happening.
So there shouldn't be a major or critical deficiency that would have a long time
No.
frame?
No.
No.
You'll get
So, but
comments
isn't this
like-
ordinance really just addressing major or critical deficiencies? So should we be concerned about something that isn't a major or critical deficiency that maybe has a 2 or 3 year
No,
timeline?
not in our ordinance. You'll get a comment from an engineer like, you ought to keep an eye on this. If it gets worse, but they don't know the difference between 2 years and 3 years, on a life expectancy, but they'll know to keep an eye on it. The problem is one of 2 things occurs. One, you don't know what to look for when they say keep an eye on it. That's one. 2 is many times the board just doesn't want to spend the money. So they're going to wait until it drips through kind of thing. Those are the 2 problems. And we've decided, fortunately, that we're not going to put it in the ordinance that we're going to follow up. Not our responsibility. But Jeff is going to put a reminder in to check building X on, February of whatever it is, 2025.
Also, I think when you send out letters, you should say that it isn't our responsibility to remind them, but if we have it in our system, we may send out a reminder, much like when you have to renew your car registration. If you don't get it in the mail, that's too bad. You're still responsible for renewing it on time.
Or a phone call.
Or a phone.
Preferably.
Right, but
Preferably a
they
phone
shouldn't count on it.
Right.
Right. So the absence of them getting notified shouldn't be an excuse for not doing the work.
Right.
Understood.
Okay, we're all in agreement.
So
Anything else that's a change?
just
sorry.
as a point, and I talked about it before, under B1 on page 4, it says a report prepared by a professional structural engineer registered in the state, blah, blah. Do we want to use the exact professional title, threshold special investigator and special investigator, just to distinguish that from any engineer or any structural engineer?
Well, in order to do these inspections, you have to be certified special inspector of threshold buildings.
Right. But
Okay,
so that's the title of the person.
right. So, and now that you're saying that, you actually are bringing up a valid point, because although there are not many, I have been notified that there are a few architects that actually have the threshold inspector license that can do it
Right.
just same as an engineer.
Right.
So,
But it's a different level of certification, I guess.
it is a
and skill.
different level, because it says professional structural engineer registered in the state of Florida. It could be a professional architect or engineer.
When you say there aren't many, like how many are there down here that are within our grasp?
I was told that there are probably 2 to 4 in the state. So you don't know that. So they just may show up, and we have to be prepared for that.
How many?
Like there could be like 2 to 4 in the whole architects.
Architects that are.
Architects that are actually.
No, how many professional?
Special investigators out there.
Threshold engineers.
Oh, 2 of them for the whole place.
Threshold engineers down
Come
here.
on.
Yeah. They just shared that number with us, and I don't want to give you a big variable. I think it was somewhere. Oh, no, that was specifically structural
Well, that's what we
engineers.
need.
Yeah, I don't have that number. There was a number that they gave me that was specific to around 600. And I go, how are we going to have 600 handle all these buildings around the entire state? So I don't know if that was the actual, it was like 660 or 600 and some. That may have been the structural, there may be more. I don't recall exactly, but.
I don't even think it's that many.
Well, and again, we're also, the reality of this, and I brought this up at the last meeting at the county, because we had an engineer give us, some feedback and a presentation. That structural engineer that has that threshold inspected may never step 1 foot on your property,
Yeah. it's his
because
staff.
they're going to send out a duly authorized representative that has to have their own qualifications, which is nowhere near that of the engineer. It could be someone like a structural, like a building inspector that has a structural inspector.
Like a PA, a physician
Yeah, it's
assistant.
kind of like, and so they're going to send out their duly authorized reps, because a lot of this work could be them slinging on the side of a building.
Yeah.
And they're not going to, they want to sit in their office and do the paperwork, and they're going to send someone else out there to take pictures and do evaluations. So there may be only so many structural special inspectors that are threshold inspectors, but they have their own army of people who are going out to do the actual inspections. So I just want to make sure that the public is clearly aware that that person that has that specific certified may never step foot on your property.
No, we understand.
Yeah.
So let me go a step further. An engineering firm, small engineering firm, that is a structural engineering firm, but hasn't taken the step or paid the fee or whatever it is to be a threshold, but they do high rises. They just haven't taken the step, gotten licensed, certified, whatever, to be threshold. Although they work on high rises all day long, every day.
They're limited in the scope. They're not threshold engineers, so they're limited on structural work. They will be unable to perform that, and they will be unable to perform these
Absolutely.
inspections.
That's right.
However, they work on high rises almost exclusively.
Doesn't matter. They're not certified for this kind of inspection.
That's what I said.
If they do,
Yeah.
they can, but they're limited in the scope of their work.
They're not limited in the scope of their work. They do that work all day long, every day.
But many of the inspections by law, by state law, specifically require a threshold inspector. So if they're doing that, then they are breaking the law.
Well, there's the answer.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so to extend this conversation a bit further, on the next page, it says professional electrical engineer for the electrical certification. Is there a specialized title for that kind of person that needs a special certification to do that work?
No, not necessarily, because they don't have something
it's
to
any-
that level.
basically
Right? Any
any
engineer
engineer.
you specialize, but you don't necessarily have a specific license for that, but they do specialize.
Okay, so back to my point, in the vast majority of the engineering firms that are down here, they work on condos, they work on high rises, so they're threshold. So there shouldn't be a problem getting threshold engineering.
No, and I even have architectural firms that have electrical engineers on staff,
Okay,
so,
shouldn't be an issue.
yeah, it shouldn't be. an
Thank
issue.
you. Anybody have anything else?
No, that was my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Because there is talk about not having enough statewide.
Yeah, it's still hard to get them because they're so busy, but they're there. Okay, great.
Wait a minute.
Yep.
One more to go to page 6 or number 3. We're saying the report must be resubmitted in this manner 3 times. Is that a bit much?
No, the third time, he's saying if your report is turned down once, you get another shot. If it's turned down 3 times, you're done.
I know, and I'm saying, why go 3 times? Why not 2 times? I mean, it just seems like it's really 3 times anyway.
Well,
First time and then two more?
Well, that's his experience.
3 more?
We go with his experience. He's got the
I mean,
knowledge.
is it too much? Why not 4 times?
Well,
we've
3
had
times rather
architects-
than 2 if it's yours.
Yeah, right. But I mean, honestly, it's a bit redundant.
We've had people resubmit stuff up to 9 times already,
Oh
just for
my
building
God.
permits from architects and stuff. So but typically it goes 1, 2, 3 times at the most, the majority of the
All
time.
right, so that's a
1, 2.
reasonable number.
Yeah, it's a reasonable number.
9 times? Okay,
Um,
I don't
and-
want to be in that building.
I've had a problem on our seawall. I don't know, how many times have we submitted on the seawall? 3 times? I'm looking at Miss Allen.
Oh, yeah, it's not me. Okay, good.
No, and it's because of the subcontractor.
Yeah, you're talking about 4801?
I don't know the numbers.
Okay. Your address? Isn't it?
Well, I'm
Well,
Boca Highland.
Highlands, yeah.
Yeah,
I believe they've now resubmitted twice.
they're, okay,
Yeah.
twice. So if this one's not right, it'll be the third
Done.
one.
Yeah, I would
Well-
agree with Jeff with the development order applications, which is different than a permit. We typically see, the max about 3 times to resubmit. Some get it done less. Some may have to be a little bit more than 3 times. Sometimes we have to repeat comments as previously requested for them to comply
There
with
you
the
go.
comments. So
It's on the technical side. The first submission was the materials that they generally use when they submit to towns. It's not the materials that we require. The second time, I don't know what the problem was, but it wasn't correct.
Is this
So
typical for
now
you to be
hopefully
so
it'll be correct.
soft-hearted here? I just am amazed.
So they come to me and say, "Arr." I said, don't come to me. There's a department. You work with the department.
Very good. I'm good.
I'm good. Great progress. Thank you.
So do we have any action on the first read?
Don't need you need a motion. With the minor adjustments that were made. Not comfortable?
So
No, if you're not comfortable, we won't do it.
one of the adjustments was to specify that both reports, the electrical and structural, have to be submitted together. The other part about the letter going out really has nothing to do. So really, the only thing that I have that I'm seeing is just adding somewhere a statement that that both reports are due at the same time,
Right.
which I honestly, I think could honestly, I can put that in on a procedural, administrative end, but we can we can absolutely add that as a small tweak to the ordinance.
And a definition of the title or the qualification of threshold.
You can put architect next to.
Yeah, yes. So that was on BI. Yep, and that one.
I have a quick question. How does this, Boca adopted an ordinance, correct, on this? How does this compare to what Boca adopted?
So a large chunk of this is verbatim from Boca. So we took a lot of this from Boca and we took the beginning part and even a lot of the administrative components of this from our town attorney. And I worked very close with Len Rubin, and we kind of put the two together and created a bit of a hybrid between the two and tweaked it to where we feel that we're in pretty good shape right now.
So the timing of the reports, the professional designation of who can actually do the work, that's all
All
like
of that
the
is
meat of it is the
standard.
same?
Right. I think Boca still only gives like 180 days to complete things.
Yeah, they're a little
Right.
more involved and you've all made that direction to Jeff and I to take a little bit more of a step back and allow the engineers, Boca's a little more engaged and will drive the process a little bit more, which you guys didn't really feel comfortable.
It's a great way to state it. More engaged, far more aggressive.
Yeah.
Did
Okay.
Boca
Way
pass
too
theirs?
aggressive.
Oh, yeah,
in my
they're
opinion.
going.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Tell local realtors
I
that.
don't think it's practical what they did.
What did you just say? Sorry, I missed it. What was that?
Well, I was asking if Boca has passed their
Yes.
ordinance, and I was told yes, but apparently a lot of the local realtors do not know that.
Oh, no,
It's
I
like-
think
I think
they
they're-
made that clear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
it was
about
in the
6 to
coastal
8
star.
weeks into it.
Yeah, it was
say
in the
about-
coastal star. Yeah.
Yeah, there are many that are objecting to Bocas. There's a bit of
Okay.
a groundswell.
Okay.
And the other thing was you were going to,
Flow
it's
chart,
an offline thing. Well, the flow chart,
Flow
yeah,
chart.
and also send to us
the list.
the specifics on how you're going to determine the timing, on timing and location of the buildings. That way we won't have a problem when we get to the final read. But that's offline, it doesn't affect.
Okay.
Are you comfortable then? Motion then?
So we won't have a number until after the first read.
That's correct.
Okay. In that case, I move that we accept the ordinance of the town of Highland Beach, Florida, amending the administrative amendments to the 7th edition of the Florida Building Code to provide for reinspection and recertification of existing threshold buildings, providing for the repeal of all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability and codification, and providing for effective date as presented with recommended amendments.
Wow. Need a second.
Second emotion.
Okay, Linelda, would you help us on a,
Sure. Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Shoemaker,
Yes.
Commissioner Gossett Sideman,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Hillman.
yes,
Motion carries. Thank you.
Just as a quick administrative update to that, it'll be returning on October 19th for the second final read. That'll give time for Jeff to share a couple of these items and you can go through and feel comfortable with those offline items before we do that.
October 19th.
October 19th. Just to
okay.
give FYI.
Consent agenda, we have none. Unfinished business, we have none. Continued discussion on the new fire insignia.
Mhm.
You have a question back there?
If,
Oh, okay.
Mayor, if I may, because the architect's here, can we move that item up? Because we by law have to shut down a couple minutes before 5:01 to switch over. I don't know if I want to, they've been very patient here all afternoon from the architects. In case you had any questions, can we get that item done before the 5 o'clock meeting?
Sure, come on down.
So we're just going to move Lynelda to the architect right now. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Where is that? So we can.
That is 11A under new business. So we're gonna move it to 11A under unfinished
Oh,
business.
you just want to spend money. That's all. Go right ahead. It's all yours.
I guess you want to ask me questions? I mean,
So, yes.
Okay,
I'm
introduce
Julie
it.
Let
Edwards
me
from
introduce-
PGAL,
yes.
and we're very excited about winning this. And I believe all the contract negotiations are done, and we are ready to start designing.
So as you remember, you met Sam
Yep.
at our last meeting. So you got an opportunity to meet him, the project. You have their proposal. Staff went through that. Their total costs are about 10.8%, which is very effective rate for based on a $4.5 million construction. And that's from start to finish, all 4 phases. Again, if our project dramatically reduces in scope, Sam made the commitment to reduce their fees if we dramatically reduce that scope. If we do, I'm guessing we're probably not going to reduce it enough to really capture that. But if we do, they're willing to do that. And if it goes over the 5.5 million, there might be some additional fees if the scope really changes. I think we're going to hit that sweet spot. 10% rule of thumb is usually 12.5%. So they're a couple percent under the rule of thumb for the design components. And they'll take us and also assist with the CM at risk procurement process. So we could bring the contractor on board during the final stages of design. So the phase 1 is seeing what we're starting with, come up with some ideas for you all to get going. So we're looking for the approval of that contract. Sam has signed it, so they're good to go. So we're just looking for authorization to proceed. You have the details in there. There is what we did insert in the contract, just to let you know, as each phase requires a notice to proceed. So they can't just roll into extra phases without giving us authorization. So we have checkpoints on the process. So as we move through, you're all comfortable, we issue that notice to proceed to each phase.
John, any comments on the contract?
Yes. First of all, there were 8 proposals. And I noticed that Glenn, Jeff, and the chief were on the board evaluation committee, but not you. What was your role?
Because of the cone of silence under the procurement laws in the state of Florida that are so wonderful. Once you start getting into the RFP process, people cannot talk about it. I have to be able to talk to you about what's going on. If I was part of that process, it would be complete silence and I couldn't tell you how we're proceeding and what's going on. So I tend to step away from that so I can maintain my communication with the commission. And then they only can give me very basic summary type stuff of what's happening. So in order to maintain my communication with you on the project, I stepped outside of it and we had a good team. Glenn, Joseph, the chief, and Jeff are really well suited for that. And then Eric out of the finance department, who does all our procurement, kind of guided that process through the state requirements. The CCNA process that you hear about is very difficult and cumbersome.
So the cost is $484,000 on what is budgeted to be a $4.5 million build. How do we come up with 4.5 million?
Basically, I had conversations during contract negotiations with Sam to let him know that this isn't a $10 million project. So we had those established conversations early based on Sam's experience with other similarly sized and situated fire stations that have been going on, either fresh start or renovation. That is the appropriate amount that they're seeing for this type of size of a project based on square footage, space constraints, what we anticipate doing, the addition of the bays. That's a comfortable number. Now, I don't know that we'll hit 4.5 million on the dot. It might be less, might be a touch more, but that's kind of the center of the lane, if you will.
Tell them the short of it. I gave him a $4 million budget.
That's what I'm thinking, you know.
Plus or minus 10%, and he went over by $100,000.
Well, okay. I was hoping for a more educated guess, but it sounds
Well,
like.
it is. We did. We talked with the architect.
He did it.
Yeah, we did. We talked to the architect. We kind of said,
He did his homework.
yeah, right. So I said, don't come in because again, when the CCNA process, there isn't a lot of guardrails in what they're proposing or coming up with and what we want. So after the group selected PGL as the final, I said, listen, this isn't a demo rebuild. We don't have an appetite for a $12-15 million public safety complex. So when we started talking about what is realistic that you guys have given me from our conversations, all of you, $4.5 million really worked out to where we are going to probably be.
So if we're really over, since we have the chief on the committee, he can arrest the others that.
Correct.
We're not going over. Ev?
Seems pretty straightforward to me.
Okay. Peg?
Same here. Thank you.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah, I guess I have a question, like, how is it that we can move forward with this contract without getting voter approval on the, I guess I'm just confused by that whole thing. This is 483, we're pledging.
We can't spend $350,000, but you could spend up to $350,000 on design. But again, if we don't get voter approval, the design, that's why there's a notice to proceed at each phase. So
Okay,
they can't go, there's a stop point. They can't exceed 350 without the voter approval, but you can do the phase one, which is, we really need that ASAP. So we can start I can get your guidance on what you want to see out of this fire station. Phase one is 80. So we can do that. We can go all the way up to 350, then we have to stop.
So because this contract has the phases with not to proceed, that's why we can go
Yep.
within
Yep.
the spending limits that we have.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, no, I thought the phases, made sense. I felt like it was a good level of detail. I'm glad that Glenn Joseph reviewed it and the chief reviewed it, and Jeff reviewed it. Obviously, they know what they're doing. So, yeah, it seems reasonable to me.
Okay.
That's it for me.
In the contract, there are timeframes for various segments, but there are no penalties if you exceed those timeframes. I'm very uncomfortable with that. So before I sign it, I'd like to see penalties. And I don't believe, unless I hear more from Glenn, that we can commit to more than $350,000 at this point. I think we can only commit to one or two of the phases.
Correct. Sam is aware of
So I
those.
can't sign a contract for $480,000.
Well, you can, but
And let's
can
explain to
sign a
me
contract for
why I
phase
can.
you can't, so we can't issue any checks over 350. You could sign a contract for 10 million. You just can't spend more than $350,000 without voter approval, but
Well, I'm committing the town to $483,000. How can I do that?
because you can only authorize 80, it's in phases. You're only going per phase.
But the mayor is saying legally, he signed a contract that says it's 484,000, regardless of
Help.
350 limit.
Help me out here, Glenn. And I don't see a need to do that to begin with. I see a need to commit to phase one.
My suggestion here in the conversation is, why don't we tweak this contract a little bit and make it clear that they cannot exceed 350 without further commission authorization. And that way they can get through phases 1 and 2. We'll just quantify where the stop is clearly. And also we'll work on some penalty clauses.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want to, again, give that direction.
Penalty clauses are going to be tough on the schedule. We don't even have.
Yeah.
So,
Well, they're committing to have certain phases done in 60 days, others done in
Yeah.
so many days. What if they don't? What if the 60 becomes 90? That's unacceptable.
Okay.
I'd like a penalty clause. And I would
Okay.
think that you and Sam would be comfortable with such a thing. I mean, he comes from Green Acres, not a problem.
Yeah.
I don't see that would prevent us from.
Okay, if the
Thank you.
commission's okay with approving that, Marshall, I will come up with those changes.
kind of like a liquidated damages clause
Yeah,
for
we'll
delay or
put some
something.
clauses in here
Okay.
before it's presented to the mayor for signature, so you're comfortable. And then
Right.
maybe at the next meeting, just put it back on as a receive and file, just so you all see it again. It's
Yeah, just a
approved
quick
today.
procedural piece and then we'll sign off on it.
But you can sign it in the next few days, hopefully.
No problem.
Okay.
As long, and the commission
need to
can
get
give
started.
us provisional acceptance, as long as I'm comfortable with what I see. Would that be okay with the
Yeah,
commission?
I think that's a very good ad.
Okay, fine. Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So,
So I guess we need to pass something that says that as long as the mayor is comfortable with the penalty clauses that would be put in and
A
the,
limitation.
and we would commit to phase 1 and 2, as long as they total less than 350.
Correct.
Okay? I guess that's the motion. Okay. Need a second on that,
I second the motion.
okay? Do we need an oral vote?
You can do a roll call vote.
Okay?
Mayor
Read it off.
Hillman,
That's you.
you,
Oh,
Say
you,
yes.
you made the first motion, correct? You made the first motion?
Yes.
I
Yes,
did
he
make the
did.
motion.
Commissioner Shoemaker?
Yes.
Commissioner Gossett Simon?
Yes.
Commissioner David?
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Moore?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, great. It is 5:02.
Okay,
So we're going to put the rest of this meeting on hold. We'll move into
okay. Yeah,
we're going to adjourn this meeting and
recess it at 5:02.
we'll recess at 5:02
Okay,
and we will begin it again after the 5:02 meeting for the final budget review.
okay.
Call the meeting to order.
Wait, give us some